Chapter 31:45. When Xiao Daoist's mouth was dry from talking, he took the teacup from Yuanya's hand and gulped it down. Then he passed the empty teacup back to Yuanya and said, "Tell the owner of the tea house that when I ascend to heaven, I'll definitely bring him along." "Yes." Yuanya nodded honestly and turned around to leave. Xiao Hua was a bit worried for Yuanya. He didn't know if the owner of the tea stall would think he was crazy and beat him out of there. Of course, Xiao Hua's worry was unnecessary. After a while, Yuanya came back unscathed without any awkwardness or embarrassment. However, Xiao Hua didn't doubt that Yuanya would repeat what he said to the owner of the tea stall. Under the scorching sun, the sound of cicadas could be heard from the banyan tree behind Xiao Hua. However, the sound of cicadas couldn't suppress the sound of Xiao Daoist's stomach, especially after he drank a big cup of tea. Strange. What's wrong with today? Xiao Daoist was obviously a bit annoyed. Normally, after sitting for so long, there would be one or two people coming over. With his silver tongue, he would at least get a few copper coins. "Master, how about we go back first?" Yuanya understood Xiao Daoist's thoughts and reminded him in a low voice. "I don't believe it." Xiao Daoist originally wanted to go back, but after hearing Yuanya's words, his heart was filled with anger. "Will there be business today? Could it be that I will be kicked out of Longevity Town after being disturbed by the monks of Shaojin Temple last night? Xiao Daoist, why don't you let me try?" Xiao Hua said with a smile. "I'm unfamiliar. Maybe I can get something on credit?" "You!" Xiao Daoist shook his head and said, "You're even more unfamiliar? That year, I also dawdled for a long time before I got something on credit from the bun shop. Since I'm standing, I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll get something." Xiao Hua smiled and looked around, then walked away. "You!" Xiao Daoist raised his hand to stop Xiao Hua, but when the words came to his mouth, he couldn't find any reason to stop him. He had only dug Xiao Hua out of the stone. He knew better than Yuanya what the crystal stones were. It was already good enough that Xiao Hua didn't ask him for the crystal stones. The perfunctory words he said yesterday were originally to coax Xiao Hua like how he coaxed Yuanya. But looking at Xiao Hua's words and actions this morning, he was not as ignorant as Yuanya. How could he possibly keep Xiao Hua? Could it be that this old man made a mistake? Isn't he? Daoist Xiao looked at Xiao Hua's disappearing back. Obviously, he wasn't going to the bun shop. "Master," Yuanya, who was standing at the side like a statue, opened his mouth. "Why didn't you stop him? He's very powerful." "Humph, how is he powerful? Do you think only the leopards in the forest are powerful in this world? If I can beat you, then I can beat the leopard? Is that awesome?" Daoist Master Xiao coldly snorted. If I were the same as before, even 10 Xiao Hus wouldn't be my match." "Xiao Hua is really amazing," Yuanya hesitated for a moment. "Those stones yesterday were not easy to move up." "Humph, you think this old man doesn't know?" Daoist Master Xiao snorted again. "Weren't you afraid that this old man wouldn't keep Xiao Hua, so you helped him move them? It took this old man more than half an hour to organize those things. Moving them up from below, wouldn't he need to move them all by himself for the whole night?" "No," Yuanya hurriedly said. When this disciple went back, he had already done it. "What? Could it be?" Daoist Master Xiao frowned. Could it be that this old man made a mistake? However, when Daoist Master Xiao raised his head again, he didn't look in the direction Xiao Hua left. His eyes narrowed as if he saw something and he lightly said, "Xiao Hua left. If he doesn't come back, then this old man admits. This old man made a mistake. No matter what, a person sealed in a stone must have an extraordinary background. If this old man, or you can form a relationship with this person, it will definitely be beneficial. In front of this kind of person, this old man's words of price are all nonsense. However, if he were to return, yeah, this fellow's origin would be thought-provoking. Tell me, what does our Jianghu temple have? Why should we keep him here? Just based on what this old man said when I saw him? In other words, even if you chase him away, he won't leave." "Master, what you are saying? This disciple doesn't understand." Yuanya heard Daoist Master Xiao talking to him, but it also sounded like he was talking to himself. He was really confused. "Forget it." Daoist Master Xiao waved his hand and said bleakly, "You really don't understand. Yeah, let's not talk about this guy's origin. What this old man wants to tell you is that in this world, other than fists and feet, there are many other mysterious methods that you have never known. Although this Xiao Hua's fists and feet are good, he is just another Xianxia. His meridians are completely blocked. He is not a person who can cultivate supernatural powers. To put it bluntly, he is a cripple. He is not even as good as you. Although he was chiseled out of a stone, he is still alive. This old man suspects. Forget it, why are we talking about this again? Why am I telling you this? Follow this old man, and when you have an opportunity in the future, your luck will be 100 times better than Xiao Hua's. As he said this, Taoist Master Zhao's mouth became dry again. He waved his hand and said, "Go, give this old man another cup of tea." "Yes, master." Xianxia raised his head and looked in the direction Xiao Hua disappeared. He had an indescribable good impression of Xiao Hua. In front of Xiao Hua, he seemed to be able to sense the safety and vastness of the wilderness he had in the past. It was much more interesting than the various kinds of people he had seen after following Taoist Xiao. Tea was naturally worthless. Not long after, Xianxia actually brought a teapot and teacup over from the tea house. Taoist Master Xiao knew that since 2 months ago, Xianxia beat up the local ruffian who blackmailed the tea house. He no longer needed to pay for his tea. This was also the reason why he didn't bring any tea. Taoist Master Xiao drank a mouthful of tea and held back his rumbling stomach. Unexpectedly, he also looked in the direction that Xiao Hua had left, which he had previously disdained to look at. In his heart he muttered, "This Xiao Hua. Just what is his background? I was in a hurry yesterday and didn't think too much about it. If he really isn't." Xiao Hua left Taoist Master Xiao and casually picked a direction to walk in. He had a smile on his face and didn't release his divine sense, Buddhist sense, or even soul sense. He just strolled along the side of the street like an ordinary mortal. Looking at the hawkers shouting, listening to the waiter calling out to him, and looking at the little boy crying on the side of the street. His heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. It seemed that many years ago, there was also a day in Lu Town when he also walked like this. That seems to be the end of the year, right? It seems that I met some bully? Xiao Hua's gaze was somewhat wandering, and the scene in front of him seemed to change. But at this moment, his eyes focused and looked at a place not far from him. A young child stretched out his hand and was about to use his finger to hook the emerald green purse at the waist of a woman. "Pay attention to your purse." Xiao Hua shouted for no reason. Another name appeared in his mind, Qiu Tong. When Qiu Tong's name appeared, his memories of Lu Town receded like the tide. Aside from a few remnants, there was no trace of it. Xiao Hua's shout was heard by almost half the street. The woman who was being stared at by the thief very naturally raised her hand and protected her purse. The thief could only withdraw his hand and turn his head to look at Xiao Hua, who was wearing an ill-fitting Taoist robe. His eyes were filled with shame and anger. Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed and he also fiercely glared at the thief. However, Xiao Hua wasn't much older than the thief and his face wasn't fierce. The thief actually wasn't afraid and even raised his fist to threaten Xiao Hua. It was quite funny. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. His heart was filled with sunshine. He really felt that everything in this world, everything in this longevity town, was very interesting. Even a thief made him feel very cute. Seeing Xiao Hua laugh, the thief was actually a bit scared. He looked to his left and immediately ran far away. Xiao Hua ignored him and looked to his left. It was a general store. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and walked in. There were 2 shop assistants standing at the door and they had been shouting the whole time. However, when they saw Xiao Hua turn around and walk in, one of them frowned and glanced at the other shop assistant. That shop assistant gave him a look and the shop assistant immediately blocked Xiao Hua with his hand. He said with a smile, "Taoist sir, please wait." "What's wrong?" Xiao Hua was surprised. "Hee, it's nothing." The shop assistant was still smiling. "My Gao Lianxing General Store is a small business and has just opened today. I don't have anything to give out. Taoist sir, please go somewhere else." "Give out?" Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He lifted his hand and pushed away the shop assistant's arm. "How could this old man want your charity? Little bastard." Hearing Xiao Hua call himself an old man, the shop assistant couldn't take it anymore. He rolled up his sleeve and said angrily, "Don't be so shameless. If you want money, go somewhere else. Don't think that you are a monk. If you stay a bit longer, this old man will beat you up. Ba, just when Xiao Hua was frowning, a Buddhist chant came from behind him. Although Tanyue is not a monk, you still have to listen to my Buddha's teachings. You have to treat people kindly. No matter what, this is still a Taoist friend. Like this old man, he is also a monk. How can you beat him up just like that? Oh, so it's Monk Mingyu. When the shop assistant heard, his face immediately changed. He hurriedly saluted behind Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Sir, how come you have time to come to the secular world today?" Xiao Hua turned around and saw a fat white monk wearing a monk's robe standing behind him with a small alms bowl and a monk's staff in his left hand. He had a smile on his face as he stood behind him. Chapter 3146. Unfortunately, this smile was the same as the shop assistant's, both with a kind of hypocrisy and sarcasm. Buddha has said, if I don't go to hell, who will? You all have suffered in this mortal world. Although this old monk has already escaped from the sea of suffering, I still can't bear not to come and save you all. Yes, the great monk is merciful. My longevity town has Shaojin Temple, with a great master like the great monk, only then can we have a peaceful life. Those demons and ghosts don't dare to disturb us. The shop assistant's mouth was sharp, and now it was like a lotus flower blooming from his mouth. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. The great monk must already be thirsty, please. Another shop assistant hurriedly bowed and said, "Please come to my humble store to serve tea." This. Zen Master Mingyu's face showed an awkward expression. This old monk still has to rush. However, without waiting for the monk to finish, a similarly fat shopkeeper immediately rushed out of the grocery store and shouted, Zen Master, please come quickly. Last month, when I went to Shaojin Temple to worship Buddha, I didn't receive any guidance from the great monk. Now that you've come, you must stay in my humble store for a while. This little one here has the newly arrived daughter tea from Cha New country. It was picked by a young chick who was less than 16 years old. It's this year's new tea, just right for the great monk's status. Moreover, this little one has already prepared everything for next month's visit to Shaojin Temple. Facing the enthusiasm of the grocery store owner, Zen Master Mingyu was helpless. That fat hand pulled on his robe, he couldn't break free. He could only reluctantly say, "This old monk will only stay for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Please." Seeing Zen Master Mingyu relent, the grocery store owner was overjoyed. He hurriedly extended his hand to invite Zen Master Mingyu into the store. Zen Master Mingyu turned his head and asked Xiao Hua with a smile, "This fellow Immortal clearly looks unfamiliar. Are you a traveling Taoist from outside? Do you want to go in with this old monk to taste the tea?" Seeing Zen Master Mingyu's flaunting expression and the grocery store owner's disdainful gaze, how could Xiao Hua go in with them? He smiled. He wouldn't lower himself to the same level as these people. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it. How can the tea of the secular world enter this old man's mouth?" After saying that, he walked away. TSK. Zen Master Mingyu naturally wouldn't speak. The grocery store owner sneered and said, "I've seen many traveling Taoists like you." He was not even comparable to ordinary beggars. Beggars could at least bow and kowtow. Taoist Xiao from Jianghu Temple can still. At this point, the grocery store owner suddenly stopped talking. Looking at Monk Mingyu's displeased expression, he hurriedly smiled and said, "Of course, Xiao Taoist is just a wild fox Zen from some Taoist temple. It can't be compared to Master's boundless Dharma." Fellow Immortal Xiao, let's not talk about it. After being locked in a stalemate with this old monk for so long in that small Taoist temple, his illness has seeped deep into his bones and he has reached the end of the wrong path. Monk Mingyu immediately hid his displeasure. He looked at Xiao Hua's disappearing figure with pity and said, "But in this world, there are many people like that immortal friend just now. They have just stepped onto the wrong path, like a lost lamb. I can't bear to see them go further and further away. I always want to give them a reminder or a warning. Grandmaster is an expert. This little one admires you." The grocery store owner had a pious expression and respectfully welcomed Monk Mingyu into the store to serve him tea. This hidden immortal continent is actually different from Xiaoyu continent. Xiao Hua also didn't take this matter to heart. While walking, he pondered, according to Su Zhuoyang, this hidden immortal continent is where Confucian cultivators live. It is reasonable to say that Buddhist sects should avoid it. At the very least, they shouldn't be so arrogant, right? But this monk Ming Yu is openly walking around this longevity town. Moreover, from what the grocery store owner said, this small gold temple seems to be quite famous in Longevity Town. Those Confucian cultivators don't care? Also, these mortals in Longevity Town seem to have a very good impression of Buddhist sections. Even when they saw the demon just now, they weren't afraid. How is it that the mortals of Xiaoyu continent don't know the situation of Tao sects at all? It really is like the saying, the great Tao is 3,000. Not only for Tao sects, but also for Buddhist sects, Confucian cultivators, Tao sections. Even that demon seems to be within the great Tao. Xiao Hua understood. What Buddhist sects emphasize is to enter the secular world. In this secular world, one can see through the secular world and comprehend the good fortune of Buddhism. But, what about Confucian cultivators? Thinking up to here, Xiao Hua stopped. He looked at the few children who were playing around and smilingly went over to ask. Xiao Hua naturally didn't know where those Confucian cultivators were, but when the slightly older child heard Xiao Hua ask where there were scholars, he immediately became excited. He smiled and pointed to the east of Longevity Town, saying that it was inside Longevity Academy. Moreover, these children weren't afraid of strangers. They actually wanted to pull Xiao Hua's hand and bring him over. However, when Xiao Hua heard the children say that they were going to walk for an hour, he immediately waved his hand and gave each of the children a spirit jujube that didn't have enough spirit qi. Then, he turned around and walked back. He came out under the guise of buying steamed buns on credit. If he really went back for an hour, Taoist Xiao would really think that he had left. After turning the corner, there was a place that sold rice. There weren't many women going in and out, each of them carrying bamboo baskets or cloth bags. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. He immediately had an idea. He looked around and walked to the side of the store. He found a shabby cloth bag and with a wave of his hand, some rice seeds fell into the bag. Then, he leisurely walked in. Not long after, Xiao Hua came out with half a string of copper coins in his hand. There was a satisfied smile on his face. Actually, not all of Longevity Town's residents are like the owner of a grocery store. Xiao Hua looked at the street in front of him and laughed in his heart. The owner of this rice shop didn't wait for this Xiao to open his mouth and immediately asked for some rice. Even if he accepted the rice, he still gave a few extra copper coins. Looking at those children just now, this world isn't as bad as this Xiao thought. Soon after, Xiao Hua started walking again. He didn't go back the way he came. He still wanted to see more of Longevity Town's situation. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua still underestimated his sense of direction. After walking for half a cup of tea's time, he saw that there were fewer people on the street, more trash on the roadside, and even fewer shops on the street. I'm really successful. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over the distance. It seemed to be where people lived. He sighed and was about to release his soul sense. At this time, a pa-pa-pa-pa sound rang in his ears. Following this sound was a low moaning sound, and there were even sounds of begging for mercy. These sounds were extremely soft, but in Xiao Hua's ears, they were extremely clear. Oh! Xiao Hua was astonished. He scanned with his soul sense and couldn't help but frown. Thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua walked across the street and entered a shabby door. He then passed through several deserted courtyards and arrived in front of a small courtyard. This courtyard was several zhang in size. There was a pile of unknown junk in the courtyard. A crooked tree that was about to die was standing in the corner of the courtyard under the scorching noon sun. At this moment, a young boy was tied to the crooked tree. Beside him were two strong men in their 30s. Their chests were open, revealing their chest hair and fat flesh. They held a stick as thick as a thumb in their hands. They were hitting the boy's head, face, and body with the stick one after another. The pa-pa sound, the low moaning, and the begging came from the boy's mouth. This boy was the one Xiao Hua saw on the street. That thief! Master, master! Without waiting for Xiao Hua to enter the courtyard, an even weaker voice came from the shabby house in the courtyard. I beg you, spare my big brother. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. In order to treat my illness. Ha ha ha, so it's like this. Without waiting for the voice to finish speaking, an arrogant voice called out. I was wondering why Luger was giving us so little money these days. So it was all given to you, this little wench. Master. The boy called Lu Guer weakly called out. I've always given you what I should. The money used to treat Xiao Yun's illness is my own money. Your own money? The other man hit Lu Guer's cheek with his stick, leaving a trace of blood on his cheek. At the same time, a stream of blood flowed from the boy's mouth. Your money is my money. It's already noon today. How come I don't see a single copper coin? What about yesterday and the day before? You don't seem to have paid enough. If you have money to treat this wild girl, why don't you give it to me? Xiao Yun isn't a wild girl. She's my little sister. The boy coldly snorted and endured the pain. Humph, she's just a bastard picked up from Liao Jiang. You still dare to lie to me and say that you're looking for your little sister. The man who hit the boy was still angry. He used all his strength to hit the boy and scolded. I didn't want to make it clear. I'll wait for you to raise her. Then I'll sell her to a brothel. However, seeing how sick she is now, I'm afraid she won't be able to live for long. Third brother, why don't we? Jie. The other man very lasciviously laughed and scolded. Second brother, how can you bear to lay your hands on such a weak and petite girl? Besides, she doesn't have any taste. What do you know? That man threw the stick in his hand to the ground. Uncle, uncle! Brother Lu yelled. Xiao Yun is only 8 years old. Please let go of her. She's still very young. Xiao Hua was standing outside the courtyard listening. At this time, he couldn't hold back anymore and kicked open the half-closed door. With a bang, the door was kicked flying. Huh! The two large men were greatly alarmed. When they turned around and saw that it was only an 18-year-old youngster, they unconsciously put down their guard. Especially Xiao Hua's shoddy Taoist robe, which completely concealed his jade-like elegance. Where did this wild Taoist come from? You don't want to live anymore? The fat on second brother's face trembled as he scolded. This Taoist master, quickly leave, quickly leave. Lu Gu didn't mention that Xiao Hua had bumped into him earlier. He thought that Xiao Hua was looking for him to give him bad luck, so he anxiously shouted. Chapter 31:47. Since you're here, where are you going? Old San laughed. Brother Lu went and a little Taoist came. Isn't this perfect? As he spoke, Old San stretched out his hand and pulled out a sharp knife from his waist. He grinned as he approached Xiao Hua. Why would Xiao Hua care about him? He raised his eyes and looked towards the end of the courtyard. Sure enough, a skinny little girl in ragged clothes was lying on the doorstep with difficulty. She raised her little head with difficulty, and on her somewhat filthy little face, there was actually an indescribable beauty. Whoa! Old Third raised his sharp knife and arrived in front of Xiao Hua. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't pay attention to him, a puzzled expression appeared on his face. He raised the sharp knife in his hand and attacked Xiao Hua's heart. Xiao Hua wasn't slow. He raised his leg, looking somewhat clumsy, to kick the strong man's abdomen. However, this action was useless in the eyes of others. Old San, who was on guard at the side, immediately relaxed. Pang! With a light sound, Old Three jumped up vigorously and stretched out his leg, touching Xiao Hua's leg. The other hand holding the sharp knife didn't seem to be slow and still pierced Xiao Hua's heart. Clang! A metallic sound came from the knife. It was as if the knife stabbed a metal stone. It couldn't penetrate the flesh. Ah! Old Third was shocked. Unfortunately, before he could scream, a heart-wrenching pain came from the place where he was fighting with Xiao Hua. His fat body flew out involuntarily and crashed into the corner of the small courtyard with a boom. He rushed into a pile of junk. Old San, what happened to you? Things happened too suddenly. Old San didn't realize the seriousness of the matter. He looked at Old San, who was already unconscious. When he saw that Old Third didn't reply, and then saw the harmless Xiao Hua slowly walking over, he hurriedly flipped his hand, and a similar sharp knife appeared in his hand. He somewhat anxiously shouted, You! Don't come over! You come over! As he spoke, Old San turned his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua's surroundings. He wanted to escape from here. Unfortunately, although Xiao Hua's movements were inconvenient, his movements were very strange. He blocked all of Old Second's possible escape routes, forcing Old Second to either go up and fight or hide in a corner. He was unable to escape towards the main entrance. Damn it,
When the second brother saw this, he somewhat staked everything on one throw and fiercely shouted as he pounced towards Xiaohua.
Dong! A muffled sound rang out. Xiaohua waved his hand and very casually hit the second brother's chest. Pooh! The second brother spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. His figure was also sent flying and fell into the pile of junk. Brother Lu was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at Xiaohua, not knowing what to say. After all, in his eyes, these two were the most powerful people in Longevity Town. When Xiaohua walked in front of him, Lu Guer panicked and said anxiously, Big brother, I was only forced to steal the money. Really? Seeing Xiaohua's hand that sent old second's sturdy body flying and was about to easily grab his neck, Lu Guer's tears were about to fall. He shouted, Big brother, it's fine if you kill me, but please don't touch my sister. Kaba. With a soft sound, the hemp rope binding Lu Guer, causing him to be unable to move, snapped like grass in Xiaohua's hands. Lu Guer was already exhausted. He could no longer lean on the banyan tree. His body involuntarily slid down and collapsed on the ground. However, Lu Guer did not care about his own sorry state. He stared at Xiaohua's slender fingers in disbelief. In his mind, he recalled the scene of Old San's sharp knife stabbing Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua opened his mouth. Lu Guer suddenly felt a huge pressure. Even his breathing became hurried. He did not know what the most powerful person he had ever met would ask him. What would he ask him? However, when Xiaohua asked the first question, Lu Guer's mouth opened so wide that a large duck egg could be stuffed inside. How many meat buns can one copper coin buy? This was the question Xiaohua asked Lu Guer. W8. What? Lu Guer blinked his eyes. He could not believe his ears. He felt that Xiaohua was afraid that he would be scared silly. Big brother. Lu Guer stuttered. I am not stupid. Xiaohua was a little impatient. He asked again, how many meat buns can one copper coin buy? Don't tell me you have never bought one before? 3. Lu Guer saw Xiaohua's serious face and knew that he was not joking. He hurriedly replied, although I don't eat it often, little Yun likes it. I have bought it for her before. Thinking of little Yun, Lu Guer's eyes showed a trace of gentleness. He hurriedly looked towards the small house. And there, little Yun had already collapsed on the doorstep. There was no more movement. Little Yun, Lu Guer hurriedly shouted. She is fine. She just fainted. Xiaohua reached out his hand and took out the hanging copper coins. He took 3 of them and threw the rest in front of Lu Guer. He said, take these to treat your sister. Thank you, big brother. Lu Guer was really ecstatic. Wasn't it because he did not have money that the doctor did not come? With these copper coins, little Yun's illness should not be a problem anymore. In the future, don't steal money anymore. Xiaohua sighed again. Although you were forced, but there are many things in this world that can make money. There is no need to let yourself be humiliated. Yes, I understand. Lu Guer's body was in pain. However, the pain in his heart was worse than the pain in his body. He felt that he was not worthy to be a human. These 2 people, have they killed anyone before? Xiaohua turned his head. It seemed that he was about to leave. He asked indifferently. Of course they have killed. Lu Guer gritted his teeth and said, if Big Brother did not come today, little Yun and I would not be able to live. Xiaohua nodded. He slowly walked to the side of the 2 unconscious men. With a point of his hand, 2 threads of samadhi true fire floated out. In the blink of an eye, the 2 men's bodies were burned. Then, without stopping, he turned around and left. Although Lu Guer was stubborn and his heart could be considered good, he still did not like this child who was a thief. However, just as he was about to leave the courtyard, Xiaohua did not forget to take out a lot of rice from the space and put it behind the door. This was enough to let the 2 people live for several months. If Lu Guer had the heart, he should be able to take advantage of these few months to find a suitable livelihood. Big brother. Just as Xiaohua stepped out of the courtyard, the youth's slightly hoarse voice sounded. This little one's name is Lu Yi. You must remember, from today onwards, this little one will no longer do anything that owes his conscience. If I go against my words, heaven and earth will not tolerate it. Take care of yourself, Xiaohua smiled faintly. Today's matter was just a matter of convenience. The people of the secular world. In his eyes now, they were really somewhat comparable to ants. Admittedly, he was unable to use the magic of the Taoist sect, unable to use the flying sword of the Confucian cultivator, but his body was tougher than any weapon in the world. This boundless strength was probably not something that the people of the secular world could imagine, right? In fact, if it was in the past or 100 years ago, Xiao Hua would have done more than this. He would have stretched out his hand to check on Xiao Yun's condition, or treat Lu Yi's injuries. However, today, in Xiao Hua's view, these copper coins were enough to replace these things. Perhaps this was Xiao Hua's gradually deepening cultivation, a kind of progress towards the master realm. Of course, the most important thing was that Xiao Hua knew that if he stayed here for a while longer, that Taoist Master Xiao would really starve. Xiao Hua used 3 copper coins and the appearance of the shabby Taoist robe to buy 10 meat buns from the bun shop's lady boss. Looking at the situation under the big tree, it was simply too far from what he had imagined. Taoist Master Xiao and Yuanya not only did not panic from hunger, but also, their faces were flushed, very moist. In this world, you can really leave anyone. Xiao Hua touched his nose, looking at the oil bag in his hand, he couldn't help but sigh. I was afraid that they would starve, so I thought of a way to exchange copper coins and then went to buy meat buns. But now it seems that even if I don't buy meat buns, they won't starve. Before Xiao Hua left, in front of Taoist Master Zhao's empty table, there was a small and exquisite palanquin. The person inside the palanquin didn't come out, but that palanquin was right next to Taoist Master Zhao's table. A very quick-witted little girl was standing next to the palanquin, saying something to Yuanya. Taoist Master Xiao was lying on the table, holding the bamboo tube with the skewers in his hand. Looking at his flushed face and excited expression, although Xiao Hua didn't listen carefully, he knew that he must be saying, "Red Luan stars move again." Sure enough, without waiting for Xiao Hua to get close to Taoist Master Xiao, Taoist Master Zhao's extremely bewitching voice came. "Miss, this old Taoist is not boasting. Your fate is really too good. Moreover, many opportunities are right in front of you." Of course, it's precisely because there are so many opportunities that if you don't grab hold of them as your last destined marriage, you might regret it for the rest of your life. If you remember today, and remember what this old man said just now, you'll blame this old man even more for not giving you directions, for not enlightening you of these mazes. Taoist Master, since it's like this, why don't you enlighten me? A clear and indifferent voice sounded. This little girl was able to meet Taoist Master Xiao here. According to Taoist Master Xiao, isn't this also a kind of fate? Yes, this old man came here to experience the world of mortals, to enlighten the world's infatuated men and women, to prevent them from regretting it for the rest of their lives. Taoist Master Xiao said righteously. However, this is a heavenly secret. If this old man were to easily reveal it, I would be punished by the heavens. Please speak. This little girl understands. The girl smiled again and said, "Qing Huan, give Taoist Master Xiao some incense money." Chapter 3148. Miss, the servant girl who was talking to Yuanya immediately became unhappy. "Didn't we just go to Shao Jin Temple a few days ago?" The master said. "Qing Huan." The woman lightly scolded. "I didn't ask you to speak, why are you saying so much?" "Yes, miss." The servant girl helplessly took out a few copper coins from the pouch at her waist and shook the empty pouch. "Miss, there are only a few copper coins left." "Taoist." The woman's voice came from the palanquin again. "I'm very sorry, there are only a few left." "No," Taoist Xiao waved his hand and said. "This old man's words are not to ask Miss for money. Besides, even if Miss wants to give, you have to wait for this old man to finish speaking. Miss needs to see if this old man's words are pleasing to her ears before deciding whether or not. If I ask you to take it, then take it." Qing Huan was unhappy. It seemed that when she talked to Yuanya wasn't too enthusiastic. Following which, Qing Huan threw the few copper coins on the table. Papa, seeing the few copper coins fall, one of them rolled on the table and actually fell to the ground. Taoist Xiao was very embarrassed. He wanted to take it, but he didn't want to squat down. "Hee, Taoist Xiao, your steamed buns are here." Xiao Hua just happened to walk closer with a smile. He bent down to pick up the copper coins and put them on the table together with the oil bag. Daoist Xiao smelled the fragrance of the steamed buns and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Although it was very hidden, the squirming in his throat couldn't be hidden from Qing Huan, who was nearby. The girl couldn't help but curl her lips. Hee, Daoist Xiao, this little girl won't delay your meal. The voice in the palanquin sounded again. This little girl didn't bring enough money today, so these copper coins can be considered as a deposit. When you have time, you can come to Zhendong's Hao family. This little girl will listen to Daoist Zhao's guidance again. After saying that, she ordered, Qing Huan, call the sedan bearers to move the palanquin. Yes, miss.
Qing Huan answered and hurriedly called the 4 strong men who were sitting under the shade of a tree to lift the palanquin and hurriedly left.
Humph, Daoist Xiao glanced at Xiao Hua and said angrily, you don't come back earlier or later, always interrupting at the most crucial moment. However, while he was complaining, Daoist Master Xiao had already put the copper coins into his cloth bag. He even took out a meat bun from his oil bag and took a big bite out of it. Seeing Daoist Xiao eat the meat bun, Xianxia also took out his leftover meat bun and hesitantly handed it to Xiao Hua. Seeing Xiao Hua smile and shake his head, Xianxia didn't say anything else and carefully ate it bite by bite. The 10 meat buns were quickly devoured by Daoist priest Xiao, and Xianxia's bun was still in its last bite. Daoist Xiao was embarrassed.
He burped and let out a long sigh.
He took out a copper coin and threw it to Xianxia. Yeah, go buy some buns. Then, I'll make some tea for master.
Yes, master. Xianxia replied almost invariably.
He quickly took the copper coin and walked away. Where did you get the copper coins? Daoist Xiao looked at Xiao Hua and burped again. I thought you left. Where can I go?
Xiao Hua laughed.
I still want to follow Daoist master to broaden my horizons. Where did you get the copper coins from? Seeing Xiao Hua avoid answering, Daoist Xiao continued to ask. He didn't believe that Xiao Hua got these 10 meat buns on credit. Even if I stole them, didn't Daoist Xiao still eat them? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Did you really steal them? Daoist Zhao's face changed, and his tone became cold. Xiao Hua was stunned. He didn't think that his joke would make Daoist Xiao have such a big reaction. He then laughed and said, do you think I'm that kind of person? I can't see through people's hearts. I don't know what kind of person you are. Who knew that Daoist Zhao's words would make Xiao Hua even more shocked? Even if many people seem to be honest on the surface and do things in the name of justice, who knows if they're right or wrong? I used to say that I can see through people's hearts, but even if I can see through them, what can I do? Just like that Hao family's young miss. She clearly wanted to let her sedan bearers rest for a while and avoid the scorching sun. At the same time, she saw that no one came to my table, so she pretended to read my fortune and wanted to give me a few copper coins. Do you think she'll believe this old man's nonsense? Even if you didn't come back, she would find an excuse to leave. She wouldn't let me finish my words. Because of the word she said before she left, if I have any urgent matters and really don't have enough to feed, I can always go to the Hao family to ask her for help. However, even if I can see through her heart, how can I not say those words? How can I not take the copper coins she gave me? This world is full of helplessness. Repent and be saved. Daoist Zhao's words caused Xiao Hua's heart to fiercely jump. He didn't expect that after he left for a while, Daoist Xiao would have such feelings. Moreover, listening to Daoist Zhao's words, he really is a person with a story. Unfortunately, after Daoist Xiao finished speaking, he actually yawned and stretched. He said in a low voice, Damn it, I fought too fiercely with the bald donkey from Shaojin Temple yesterday. I didn't even sleep well. After he finished speaking, he actually laid down on the table. After a while, he started snoring again. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled and walked to the side of the big tree. He leaned against the big tree and also lazily watched Xianxia walk back step by step and eat the meat buns in small bites. As if it was Xianxia's habit, when he ate the last meat bun, he very firmly stopped. He carefully wrapped the bun in oil and put it into his bosom. Then he walked in front of Xiao Hua and bit his lips, his gaze firmly fixed on Xiao Hua. Oh, what's wrong? Xianxia. Xiao Hua was a bit stunned. He smiled and said, Have you taken a fancy to Qing Huan? You want me to ask Daoist Xiao for you? Why didn't you leave? Xianxia was not amused by Xiao Hua's words and indifferently asked. Xiao Hua strangely said,
Why should I leave?
This hidden immortal continent is so big. Isn't it the same wherever I go? Since it's the same everywhere, why shouldn't I stay here? You just left. I thought you left. Xianxia did not care how profound Xiaohua's words were and still said, I was a bit disappointed in my heart. I felt that I wouldn't be able to see you in the future. Xiaohua blinked his eyes. Listening to Xianxia's words, it was almost a confession. I somewhat regret that I didn't ask you when you were here. Xianxia did not care about the sudden goosebumps on Xiaohua's body and continued, Since you are back now, I must ask you. What question? Xiaohua was very surprised. He really did not think that Xianxia would ask him such a deep question. What you said this morning, was it true? Xianxia stared at Xiaohua and asked word by word. What did I say? Xiaohua frowned and asked curiously. That fist technique you used this morning. Can you really teach me? Xianxia was not discouraged by Xiaohua's question and continued to ask. This. Xiaohua was really stunned. What he said in the morning was obviously a joke. He had never taught this Big Dipper God fist to anyone, and he also did not think that Xianxia could learn it. Seeing Xiaohua's hesitation, Xianxia became anxious. However, he was not like an ordinary person. He was able to discern Xiaohua's true thoughts from his hesitation. Xianxia knelt on the ground with a plop, kowtowed and said, Master, please teach me the fist technique. Master? Hee, you get up first, Xianxia. Xiaohua laughed and raised his hand. Yes, master. Xianxia didn't kneel for a long time like ordinary people. He stood up obediently. You have a master. I am not your master. Xiaohua waved his hand. Moreover, I don't intend to accept you as my disciple. Yes, master. Xianxia still said the same words. Xiaohua shook his head and did not intend to correct this mistake. He only stared at Xianxia and asked, If you want to learn this fist technique, you must tell me, why do you want to learn it? Why do I want to learn it? Xianxia was stunned. He scratched his head and said, If I learn this fist technique, I will be more powerful. Naturally, I want to learn it. Why not? Xianxia's answer was straightforward, leaving Xiaohua speechless. Looking at Xiaohua who was lying on the table, Xiaohua really felt that this was Xiaohua's arrangement. How about this? Tell me about your life experience. Since you want to take me as your master, you should at least let me know about your origin, right?
Xiaohua thought for a moment and said,
Yes, master. Xianxia respectfully said, Disciple has no parents since childhood. Since I can remember, I have been living with a female wolf in the jungle. Xianxia's experience was very sad, but in Xianxia's words, it was very simple. In just a moment, Xiaohua knew that Xianxia was born in hidden immortal continent's profound jade dark forest. Since childhood, he had been living with the wild beasts in the jungle and had never come into contact with humans. When he grew up, he became the king of the wolf pack after the death of the female wolf who had been with him for a long time. Later, due to some reason, he came out of the jungle and met a hunter. However, he did not live the life of an ordinary person. Because he was unruly, he was sold to the arena by the hunter. Xianxia had received training in the gladiator arena, and it was there that he had gotten his name. For his own survival, Xianxia fought in the arena for about 3 years. There were no undefeated generals in the gladiator arena. In a duel, Xianxia was seriously injured by his opponent and almost lost his life. At that time, he met Taoist Xiao and was brought out of the gladiator arena by Taoist Xiao. As for how the penniless Taoist Xiao persuaded the owner of the gladiator arena, Xianxia, who was unconscious at that time, did not know. Later, under Xiaohua's care, Xianxia finally recovered. After that, he followed Xiaohua and drifted in hidden immortal continent. A few years ago, Xiaohua brought Xianxia to the Taoist temple in Immortal Town. He suddenly had an idea and decided to stay in the Taoist temple. Chapter 3149. Oh, so that's how it is. After hearing Xianxia's explanation, Xiaohua finally understood why Xianxia was sometimes very kind and sometimes extremely vigilant. But then he felt a little strange. Xianxia only said that he came out of the forest, but why did he come out, or what happened to him, he didn't say. Master. After talking about his experience, Xianxia asked again, Are you willing to teach me fist techniques? Tell me the truth. Xiao Hua answered Yuanya without any trace of politeness. For children like him who grew up in the forest, straightforwardness was their favorite method. You don't deserve to be my disciple. I have never thought of accepting a disciple. Moreover, your current master is Taoist Xiao. If you leave Taoist Xiao and become my disciple, that is a great crime of deceiving one's master. This. Yuanya scratched his head, somewhat puzzled. Master said that I don't deserve to be your disciple. I still somewhat understand. But why do I have to commit a great crime when Master teaches me fist techniques? Moreover, I don't intend to leave Master. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, This, you don't understand. When you have time, ask Taoist Xiao. As long as he agrees, this old man can consider teaching you a few moves. Okay, Yuanya was quite obedient, nodding obediently. He stood beside Xiaohua and said in a low voice, Master often scolded me for being brainless. But I am not angry. I know that I don't know much. I am working hard to cultivate according to Master's wishes. But I really don't understand what you are talking about. Just like yesterday, Steward Lu had invited his master, but when the bald donkey from Shaojin Temple went, Steward Lu welcomed him with a smile and said that he couldn't go to Shaojin Temple to pray, so he asked his master to go. Master was also the same. He obviously hated those bald donkeys, but he still had a smile on his face. He waited until the ceremony was over, and when he came out of Minister Lu's house, he became hostile. At this point, Yuanya actually looked at Xiaohua. Seeing that Xiaohua's face didn't show any impatience, he said, Although I could beat 5 bald donkeys, 10 of them went to Shaojin Temple at once. I couldn't beat them, so I could only run away. The copper coins that Master got from Minister Lu were all snatched away by those bald donkeys. In the end, all that was left was the copper coins I had. Those copper coins were meant to be used to buy meat buns today, but Master took those copper coins to drink wine. I don't understand. Also, many people warmly invite Master to their homes when they see him, but Master basically doesn't go. I remember one time when I went there, their faces were cold and they were saying strange things. But what about when I'm about to leave? Then they said, sit down a little longer, and I obeyed and sat down, and they were displeased again. I don't understand what they want me to do. Or do you not want me to go? Do you want me to leave? Or do you not want me to leave? So, although I'm very happy to follow Master, the things that I encounter every day make me very annoyed. This made me miss the days in the forest, and even the dangerous gladiator arena. In those places, I don't need to think so much. I only need to think about how to survive and how to find food. Looking at this extremely simple youth, ripples appeared in Xiao Hua's heart. Yes, whether it's a person of the secular world or a cultivator, they all seem to wear an inexplicable mask on their faces, hiding their true intentions under the mask, letting others see the gentleness and etiquette that others want to see. And when these manners and gentleness are torn apart, it's bloody man-eating. Even I can't deal with the various forms of the human world and the ways of the world, let alone this Yuanya who has never lived a normal life in the human world. Unconsciously, Xiaohua felt even more pity for Yuanya, secretly thinking, yes, in Yuanya's eyes, there is only survival and becoming stronger. Becoming stronger is for survival. When he saw the Big Dipper God fist, he knew that this was a path that would make him stronger, so he immediately wanted to leave, wanting to live a better life. His way of thinking is very simple. He doesn't have any distracting thoughts like a sect or a master. Thinking of this, Xiaohua suddenly thought of the Chongbai sects by Fei he met in the past, that cultivator who seems to be somewhat despicable, disregarding the outcome of the battle, only putting his own interests at the forefront. Isn't Bai Fei's actions somewhat similar to Yuanya's? It can even be said that they are essentially the same. It's all for survival. Forget it. Xiaohua sighed. I wonder how Bai Fei, Shi Wuming, Meng Tian, and Rua Taohong are doing now? Did they go to that place? Suddenly, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. That's right. Since Bai Fei could enter the Chongbai sect and cultivate to the foundation establishment stage, why can't Yuanya cultivate as well? Moreover, this Xiao was forced to have no place to hide in the Xiaoyu mainland. Wasn't it because of the Immortal music sect and the Immortal Ascension Gate? A sect's strength is always greater than a single person. This Xiao can face 2 sects alone. It's better to lead a sect to face them. Xiaoyu mainland's Fortune Gate. After 100 years of development, did it survive? Or was it destroyed by others? What is Zhonghaoren's fate? Since Zhonghauren can think of building a fortune gate on the Xiaoyu mainland, and he can also create the Heavenly Talisman sect, why can't this Xiao rebuild a fortune gate on the hidden Immortal mainland? Xiao Hua's thoughts unconsciously soared. Moreover, in the three mainlands, there are many things to be done for Taoism. Isn't this the time for this Xiao to show off his skills? Also, this Xiao came from the Xiaoyu mainland to the three mainlands through the space meridian. Isn't this karma? Or this Xiao inexplicably came here because the heavens want to borrow this Xiao's hands to revitalize the Dao sect? With the three mainlands as a foundation, and a fortune gate with thousands of disciples, perhaps. Xiao Hua thought of Jianghu in disbelief. Can help Jianghu accomplish what she wants? Master. Just as Xiao Hua thought of Jianghu's beautiful face again, Yuanya annoyingly woke Xiao Hua up. Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya in annoyance and asked, "What? Master, what are you thinking about?" Yuanya was very curious. "You have a very strange smile on your face." Strange smile? What do you mean?
Xiao Hua didn't understand.
It's the smile of a fox when it sees a chicken coop. Yuanya pointed out the little fox in Xiao Hua's heart without holding back. "Go away," Xiao Hua waved his hand. "What does a little child know?" Master. Yuanya opened his mouth again. "When did I let you call me master?" Xiao Hua didn't agree again. Yuanya felt wronged and said in a low voice, "You already agreed when I called you master just now." "I didn't pay attention just now." Xiao Hua said indifferently, "It's not that easy to call me master. First, you have to ask Taoist Xiao. He is your current master. You can only ask me after he agrees." Good. Yuanya was very excited when he heard Xiao Hua agree. He almost jumped up. "I will wake master up now." "Don't be anxious.
It's not a matter of a moment."
Xiao Hua waved his hand and looked at the afternoon street. There weren't many people left. Presumably the afternoon heat had made them stay in their houses.
Even in the stalls and shops on the side of the street, whether it was the staff or the customers, they were all listless.
"I also want to know, what did Taoist Xiao teach you?" Xiao Hua glanced at Taoist Xiao, who was still sleeping on the table, and asked, "This." Yuanya hesitated when he heard this. When Xiao Hua saw this, he immediately smiled and said, "If it's not convenient to say, then don't say it." "No," Yuanya said with some distress. "I was thinking, what did master teach me all these years? Why do I have to call him master?" Xiao Hua was shocked. "Taoist Xiao didn't teach you anything." "Master seems to have taught me a lot, but I have never seen anything like master's martial arts," Yuanya said with some distress. "He didn't even teach me anything that could increase my strength. This is also the reason why I want to learn from master after seeing him display his martial arts." "So it's like this." Xiao Hua understood a little. Maybe Taoist Xiao saved Yuanya because he wanted to make him his guard? "Master, what else do you want to ask?" Yuanya looked at Xiao Hua very carefully. A beast's instinct told him that this person in front of him was not only safe, but could also make him stronger. He had to seize this opportunity. "Nothing." Xiao Hua looked at this young man who was not only simpler than cultivators, but also more simple than ordinary people. He really didn't know what he wanted to know. "Oh right, what instrument did you play last night?" This Xiao heard. "You seem to have something on your mind." Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the instrument Yuanya played last night. "That instrument is called Sun. It was given to me by someone." It was rare for Yuanya to be a little embarrassed. His eyes, which had never changed, suddenly widened. It seemed that his mood had changed. "But this is my secret. If master wants me to say it, then I can only tell master." "Ha ha." Xiao Hua laughed when he heard this. He looked at Yuanya, who was feeling uneasy because of the threat in his words, and waved his hand. "Since it's your secret, it's fine if you don't tell this Xiao. And this Xiao is not your master." "Yes, master." Yuanya was a little disappointed, but his answer was still the same. Xiao Hua actually wanted to ask about Taoist Xiao, but looking at Yuanya, even if Taoist Xiao had a story, he might not be able to tell. Not to mention that Taoist Xiao wouldn't tell his own story to this wild child who didn't understand the ways of the world. Immediately, Xiao Hua didn't ask anymore. He closed his eyes and sat there, refining the earth crystal Yao milk and recovering his cultivation. Yuanya waited for a long time. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't say anything, he didn't get angry. He also sat there like Xianxia and closed his eyes. When he was very young, he already understood that if he wanted to catch prey, he had to be patient, and if he wanted to get something, he had to pay a price.
He could ambush an antelope in the grass for 3 whole days, in order to learn the Fist of the North Star from Xianxia. He still had this bit of patience.
Chapter 3150. The scorching sun slowly moved over their heads, and the scorching heat had already subsided. As the streets resumed their liveliness, Taoist Xiao also woke up. Xianxia imitated Xianxia and closed his eyes for a while, but in the end, he couldn't endure it any longer. His eyes opened again, and he vigilantly looked around. Seeing Taoist Xiao stretch and sit up straight, he also hurriedly stood up and stood behind Taoist Xiao. Xianxia stood up, and Xianxia also stood up. However, looking at his lazy and somewhat clumsy appearance, where was the demeanor of an expert? For hours after noon, Taoist Xiao's table seemed to be bustling with noise and excitement. Not only did 2 families bring their children to ask Taoist Xiao to name their children, but there were also 3 couples who secretly asked Taoist Xiao to give them advice on marriage and the so-called 8 characters of horoscope. Of course, the 8 characters of these 3 couples were all suitable in Taoist Xiao's mouth. Even if one pair didn't seem to be suitable, with 3 copper coins, Taoist Xiao used his great divine ability to change the heavenly secrets and make them suitable. Xianxia found it funny behind Taoist Xiao, but this had nothing to do with him. He only slightly narrowed his eyes and stood there. Seeing that the sun was already setting, Xiao Taoist's face was filled with joy under the orange sunlight. He had earned a lot of copper coins today, which was really out of his expectations.
A faint melody came out of his mouth, which was a rare sight.
"Io, is this fellow Taoist Xiao?" A slightly exaggerated voice came from not far behind him. "Did you sing this little tune of Liao Jiang?" Xiaohua's lips curled up. He didn't need to look. Although this voice wasn't very familiar, it was familiar. It was Zen Master Ming Yu that he met in front of the general store. As Zen Master Ming Yu's voice entered his ears, Taoist Xiao's body clearly stiffened. Without waiting for him to speak, another faint voice came out. "Ba, fellow Taoist Xiao, is this the kind of gaudy little tune passed down in your Taoist school? It's no wonder. Such a difficult song. Even a talented person would not be able to master it easily. Even a senior monk of my Buddhist sect would not be able to understand it. Who would dare to be a disciple of your Taoist sect?"
Thinking about it, senior brother Ming Yu often lamented to this poor monk that Taoists aren't popular. This poor monk probably knows the reason now.
Taoist Zhao's mouth was filled with bitterness. What else could he say?
He had been careless and allowed the Buddhist monk to grab his braid.
He turned his head to look at the 3 of them. Although they were smiling submissively and occasionally clasping their hands together to greet the villagers they met, the pride in their eyes and the brand-new monk robes made Xiao Taoist priest feel that it was a form of mockery.
"Oh, and this fellow Immortal. I think we met before noon?"
Zen Master Ming Yu looked at Xiaohua again and said with a smile, "This poor monk sees that you are still young and inexperienced in the world. Don't be deceived by this Taoist. If you have time, I hope you can make a trip to my Shaojin temple and see the brilliance of my Buddhist sect." Immeasurable Heavenly Lord, where are you 3 fellow immortals trying to deceive the ignorant? How many men and women have you fished up from the sea of sin today? Taoist Master Xiao straightened up and retorted without backing down. "Looking at your physiques, they are indeed stronger than I. It's quite suitable for us to fish someone out from this sea of misery. Alas, my Taoist sect emphasizes being detached from the world. I sang a few songs to experience the suffering of the people, and also to improve my cultivation. Fellow immortals, it's said that the Buddhist sect emphasizes going ashore, treating the boundless mortal world as a sea of misery. You guys don't rest on the shore, but wander in the sea every day. How can you fish people out from the sea of misery? Could it be that you want to use silver to make boats? As for this fellow Taoist, he has long been a disciple of my Taoist sect. Even if you beat him to death, he won't go and learn any Buddhist doctrine." Xiaohua heard Taoist Master Zhao's words and couldn't help but laugh. That's right, except for Zen Master Ming Yu, the 2 monks behind him were fat and big, looking like wine sacks and rice bags. If it weren't for the fact that the Buddhist sect's days were too comfortable, how could they be like this? Without waiting for Zen Master Ming Yu to speak, the other monks smiled faintly. Even if my Buddhist sect uses silver to make boats in the Sea of Misery, it's still because my Buddha sacrificed himself. It's 100 times better than your Taoist sect using copper coins to make boats. Even if my Buddhist sect has disciples fishing people out from the shore, it's still tens of thousands of people. It's 1,000 times better than your Taoist sect's 3 to 5 lone men. You. Taoist Master Zhao's soft spot was obviously poked by the 3 monks. After being at a loss for words, he coldly said, "Speaking of lotus flower tongue, I can't compare with the Buddhist sect that only relies on words to save people. However, my Taoist sect has always emphasized cultivation of Tao techniques. If you guys can do it, I don't even need to make a move. This good-for-nothing disciple of mine can also fight 1 against 3. Why don't you give it a try?" Xiao Hua, who was at the side, laughed in his heart. He really didn't expect that on the hidden Immortal continent, the Taoist sect and the Buddhist sect would actually confront each other like this. Seeing the embarrassment on the faces of the 3 monks, Taoist Master Xiao was very proud of himself. He didn't know how many times he had fought with the monks of the small gold temple, so he was very clear about each other's strength. He clearly knew that other than Zen Master Ming Yu, the other 2 monks couldn't possibly be Yuanya's opponent. Furthermore, how could Zen Master Ming Yu fight him on the street? He couldn't win against them with words, so he could only use a challenge to suppress the 3 of them. Unexpectedly, the 3 monks suddenly laughed, as if they had seen something very interesting. They looked at each other, then Zen Master Ming Yu opened his mouth and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, is this a challenge from your Jianghu temple to my small gold temple?" Taoist Master Xiao had a bad feeling. However, now that the matter had reached this point, there were already a few villagers of the Longevity town standing on the side. How could he shrink back? Seeing Taoist Master Xiao nod his head, he stiffened his neck and said, that's right. Does small gold temple dare to accept my Jianghu temple's challenge?" Of course. Zen Master Ming Yu laughed as if he saw a little lamb falling into a trap. He replied, "This old monk will represent my small gold temple to accept the challenge from Jianghu temple. 3 days later, it will be in front of my small gold temple's mountain gate. However, it doesn't need to be 1 against 3, it only needs to be 1 against 1. Why 3 days later? Why not in my Jianghu temple?" Taoist Master Xiao hurriedly shouted. "Since it is the Jianghu temple that issued the challenge, the time and place naturally will be decided by my small gold temple. This is the custom of the 3 continents. Could it be that Taoist Master Xiao doesn't know? Besides, does Taoist Master Xiao think that your Jianghu temple has a place to show off your martial arts?" Zen Master Ming Yu replied with some disdain. "Fine." Taoist Master Xiao clenched his teeth, not knowing whether to agree or not. However, Xiao Hua looked at Taoist Master Zhao's slightly moving eyes and already somewhat understood what he was thinking. The small gold temple knew of Yuanya's strength, yet it still didn't need to fight 1 against 3. Something must have changed in 3 days. Other than running away, what other good plan could Taoist Master Xiao have? Taoist Master Xiao, this old monk will spread this matter throughout Longevity Town. If the Jianghu temple doesn't show up in 3 days, then Taoist Master Ming Yu's face. Whatever Xiao Hua could think of, Zen Master Ming Yu naturally had already thought of it. Right after Taoist Master Xiao opened his mouth, Zen Master Ming Yu immediately said, and his gaze swept across the surrounding villagers. Fine. Taoist Master Zhao's teeth were about to be bitten off. His face was full of bitterness, but he couldn't not agree in front of everyone. Also, Zen Master Ming Yu laughed again. Since it's a challenge, naturally there must be a reward. Okay. Hearing this, Taoist Master Zhao's eyes brightened. His teeth suddenly didn't hurt anymore. He shouted, "How many copper coins?" "Not the copper coins you Taoists use to redeem people." Zen Master Ming Yu said with some disdain, "This time my Buddhist sect and your Taoist sect will make a big bet. Whoever loses will have to leave Longevity Town." What? Taoist Master Xiao was shocked. He hurriedly clenched his teeth again, as if the teeth that had stopped hurting just now were starting to hurt again. There's actually such a grand event between Buddhism and Taoism? Just as Taoist Master Xiao was clenching his teeth again, and almost swallowing them into his stomach, a clear voice rang out from outside the crowd. 10 days later is the day of the decennial Immortal and Buddha ceremony between us Confucian cultivators and Buddhism, right? It's been a long time since my Longevity Academy and Small Gold Temple joined hands to discuss the friendship between Buddhism and Confucianism. Why don't we just move this challenge to 10 days later? How about my Longevity Academy also participate once? When Zen Master Ming Yu and the others heard this, joy appeared on their faces. They looked towards the source of the voice, put their palms together and said, "So it's Zhu Tanyue, this poor monk greets you. You're too polite, 3 great masters please." Xiaohua raised his head and looked over. In the crowd, there was a middle-aged man wearing Confucian attire, wearing a Confucian headband, and holding a feather fan in his hand. He smiled and cupped his fists in return. The surrounding crowd also respectfully called out, "Greetings, Principal Zhu." Looking at this square face, sharp eyebrows, fine nose, and bright eyes Principal Zhu, Xiaohua already understood that this Confucian cultivator should be the principal of Longevity Academy in Longevity Town. Behind this Confucian cultivator, there were several rows of scholars of various ages wearing the same Confucian attire. They lined up in a neat formation, and very elegantly walked over from outside the town. Presumably, Longevity Academy had something to do outside the town, and they were returning in the afternoon and were about to pass by here. Taoist priest Xiao. That Principal Zhu slightly greeted Zen Master Ming Yu and the people beside him. He looked at Taoist priest Xiao with a smile and said, "Although you and I have never met before, this little one has long heard of Taoist priest's name. Now is a good opportunity. You won't stop my Longevity Academy from participating in this matter, right?" Hee hee. Taoist priest Zhao's face was a bit unnatural. He concealed his laughter and said, "This challenge was originally a matter between my Taoist sect and Buddhist sect. I also didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with Small Gold Temple, but Zen Master Ming Yu is pressing on step by step. I have no choice but to accept." Longevity Academy is a Confucian cultivator, and has nothing to do with Buddhist sect or Taoist sect. There's no need for them to get involved, right? Moreover, since the Immortal and Buddha ceremony is in 10 days, your Longevity Academy and Small Gold Temple can freely exchange pointers. Why are you pulling my Taoist sect in for no reason? Are Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators joining hands again? Hee hee. Taoist priest Xiao is thinking too much. Principal Zhu smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "The Immortal and Buddha ceremony that is held once every 10 years is merely a tradition of my hidden immortal continent and Western paradise. It is to celebrate that time in ancient times when the 3 continents joined hands. Now, who knows how many years have already passed? This Taoist sect has already lost many other Taoist sect. Why is Taoist priest thinking too much?" Chapter 3151. There was a towering mountain range that stretched for thousands of miles. This mountain range was very strange. There were no trees on the mountain range, nor were there any birds or beasts. There were only red rocks. The surface of the rocks emitted a faint light, and within the light, there were layers upon layers of talismans that slowly rotated. In the western sky, the blood-red sun shined on the red rocks, making them look like they were emitting a faint flame. Thousands of feet above the mountain range, there were also countless powerful formations and restrictions. There was no wind or clouds, and the central part of the sky was filled with a faint grayish-white color. Within the grayish-white color, there were layers upon layers of black clouds that were like mountain ranges. Looking from the outside, there were only bursts of lightning flashing in the gloomy black clouds. There were also faint sounds of thunder, but if one listened carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear it at all. Even the flashing light was like a candle in the night, disappearing in a flash. At the end of the mountain range was the mouth of a valley that was hundreds of feet wide. The mouth of the valley was also like the top of the mountain range. There was a firm formation that firmly sealed the entrance, and not a single bird or beast could be seen. The powerful fluctuations from the formation spread out without any concealment, however. At this moment, there were thousands of cultivators 100 feet away from the entrance of the valley. They wore different clothes and held different magical treasures in their hands. They stretched from the ground all the way to the sky and completely surrounded the entrance of the valley. All of the cultivators had nervous expressions as they stared at the formation at the mouth of the valley without blinking. The treasures in their hands emitted different lights, as if they had all made ample preparations. As long as there were any abnormalities at the mouth of the valley, countless treasures would fly out and smash into the mouth of the valley. The inside of the valley was not as calm as the outside. The inside of the valley was much more spacious than the outside. It was likely several miles wide. The stone wall inside the valley was different from the stone wall outside the valley. Although it was also made of red rocks and had layers of restrictions, the restrictions here were 10 times finer than the ones outside the valley. Every single rune was covered in fine lines, and those fine lines created wind runes. The wind runes rushed into the runes, and once again, they emitted various colors of brilliance. However, this light was covered by a black and red color on the rocks. This black and red color covered the entire walls of the valley, and the thickness was different. Experienced cultivators would know that this black and red color was caused by the blood that had splashed on the walls. Looking into the depths of the valley, the walls of the valley seemed to have been washed by blood. It was a black and red color, and it was very strange. The valley seemed to have just gone through a fierce battle. The air was filled with the smell of blood. The air was rich with the yuan qi of heaven and earth. At this moment, it was extremely violent. From time to time, one could hear the sound of explosions. Small strong storms suddenly formed and rushed in all directions. Most of them hit the mountain rocks of the mountain range. On the crimson-red mountain rocks, talismans flashed and the storms disappeared without a trace. Even the black and red blood didn't fall. It was unknown how much blood had been spilled on the rocks, and how many years this blood had existed for. Not only that, but because of the battle, the space inside the valley had become extremely unstable. From time to time, spatial cracks would appear. Although these spatial cracks only appeared for a short period of time, they were very destructive. Occasionally, a spatial crack would hit the rocks, and the blood on the rocks would scatter. Then, the talismans on the rocks would collapse, revealing the red rocks. Only when the spatial cracks disappeared did the talismans around the rocks slowly gather and restore the formation. At this time, there weren't many living people in the valley. There were only corpses lying on the ground. The corpses were also strange. Half of them were human corpses, and the other half were not very similar to humans. Some of these corpses were very tall, some were very black, some had wings on their backs, and some had legs on their heads. There were even all kinds of strange shapes of birds and beasts. These corpses had one thing in common, and that was that there were traces of black gas or blood-red light flashing faintly. These black gas and blood-red light were between the scattered pieces of the corpses. Some of them were like earthworms that wanted to gradually enter the rocks, and some were like small snakes that wanted to swim to other places. However, without exception, they were all caught by the flashing restrictions on the ground. Traces of lightning-like brilliance flashed, and they were gradually strangled to death. There weren't many living people in the valley, and they all had magic treasures in their hands. Their bodies flashed with various colors as they flew rapidly in the air. From time to time, they avoided the spatial cracks and extremely strong hurricanes as they flew into the depths of the valley. Everyone's eyes were filled with vigilance, and their faces were filled with extreme exhaustion. However, their divine senses were like a spider's web, sweeping around inch by inch. They didn't dare to miss a single spot. The deepest part of the valley was an area with a radius of 10,000 feet. This space of 10,000 feet was like a giant cocoon, filled with black and red mist. This mist rolled violently like a cocoon squirming. Inside the black and red mist, there were countless broken limbs moving up and down from time to time. There were even some wailing heads that suddenly appeared and let out a shrill cry. However, before this shrill cry could be heard, a layer of violent fluctuations appeared outside the black gas, blocking it. The core of the black and red mist wasn't inside the stone wall, nor was it on the ground. Instead, it was at the center of this 10,000 feet wide area. The core was no longer covered in mist, but rather extremely condensed. Drops of sticky blood mixed with the black flame slowly flowed in the center. The black flame surrounded a hole that was several hundred feet wide. Almost endless black gas and black flames flowed out from this hole. They couldn't rush into the valley in time, so they condensed at the core. Bursts of obscure and indescribable sobbing sounds came from this hole. Aside from the black gas and the sobbing sounds, the depths of the hole were filled with blood-red light. It was impossible to see what was inside at all. At this moment, at the edge of the hole, countless thunderous sounds came from the void, and endless lightning flashed. Waves of slow, unparalleled, and inhuman force came from the edge of the hole and squeezed inwards. Under this pressure, the hole began to shrink bit by bit. Looking at the black-red ball of qi that had shrunk to about 1,000 feet in size, there were over 200 cultivators dressed in different Taoist robes standing in the air. There were old and young cultivators, men and women, and some had simple faces and some had ferocious appearances.
However, without exception, these cultivators were even more tired than the cultivators flying in the outer valley. The light around many of them had dimmed, and the treasures in their hands were damaged. Many of them had lost an arm or a leg. Among these cultivators in Taoist robes, there were more than a dozen young men in sword robes. They didn't have any treasures in their hands, but they stood straight as if they were treasures themselves. What was special was that strands of spiritual energy rushed in from all directions. There was a faint flash of light around them, and flying swords flew out from their bodies. The silhouettes of the flying swords flashed by and didn't linger for even a moment. Whether it was the cultivators in Taoist robes or the swordsmen in sword robes, their expressions were filled with vigilance and pride. Although they were staring at the black gas, there was a sense of relief in their eyes. Although these 200 cultivators appeared to be standing in a disorderly manner, it was actually a very powerful formation. Slowly and rhythmically, the natural energies of heaven and earth rushed into the formation from all directions, evenly and in an orderly manner, falling into the left side of different cultivators. As the spiritual energy rushed in, the formation seemed to be breathing and flashed with a faint golden light. A faint rooster shape appeared, but there were many flaws in this rooster shape. It was clear that there were cultivators in those places, but they were no longer there. About 10,000 feet above the hundreds of cultivators, there were several people standing under an oval-shaped canopy. The cultivator at the front looked to be around 30 years old. His face was simple and his forehead was bulging. Under his thick eyebrows, his eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky. The cultivator's gaze swept across the formation as if his gaze could pierce through the black and red fog. He smiled and said to the 40-year-old cultivator next to him, "Vice Alliance leader Luo, the reason why the 3 cultivation countries were able to defeat the Devil Realm was all because of the Alliance leader's Pleiades devil-devouring immortal formation. I thank the Pleiades devil-devouring immortal alliance on behalf of the 3 cultivation countries and the country of sword cultivators." Vice Alliance leader Luo, who was in his 40s, had a very dignified appearance. Even though he did not speak, there was an indescribable presence about him that was like the light of the rising sun. This presence was not some sort of dharma power or divine ability, but it made people feel close to him at first glance, as if he was the only friend they had in their lives. Vice Alliance leader Luo's movements were even more elegant. When the cultivator finished speaking, he immediately bowed and said, "Senior Xianxia, you are the Alliance leader, ah. You are too polite." Hearing this, Starry Sky panicked. Starry Sky had always believed that no matter if it was the 3 cultivation countries or the Pleiades Immortal Alliance, they were all part of my Taoist sect. Their inheritance originated from the ancient times. You and I are going to work together. No matter if it was the ancient Buddhist sect or the Confucian cultivators, or even the current Devil Realm, they will all be destroyed under the torrent of my orthodox Taoism. Haha. Vice Alliance leader Luo represents the Pleiades Immortal Alliance. Your ambition is really great. This 30-year-old cultivator was the alliance leader of the Morning Rain Continent's 3 cultivation countries, Taoist Xianxia. After hearing Luo Xingtian's words, he smiled and said, "I don't dare to think about these. I only want to be able to resist the invasion of the Devil Realm during my time as the alliance leader, protect the demon-resisting valley, and protect the 3 cultivation countries, as well as the country of Huan and other places." At this point, a hint of worry flashed across Taoist Xianxia's smiling face. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but hesitated. Chapter 3152. How could Luo Xingtian not see it? He hurriedly smiled and said, "Senior Xianxia, we have already won the battle in the demon-resisting valley. The space meridian between the demon realm and the human realm has gradually closed under the power of the realm. Only the demon venerables of the demon realm have the power to resist such power, right? With their demon venerables' bodies, they can't pass through the space meridian between the 2 realms. The curtain of the war is about to fall irrevocably. Senior, what are you worried about?" Sigh Xingtian. Taoist Master Xianxia looked around and seemed to be a little worried. He said through voice transmission, "You have been in the 3 countries for less than 1,000 years. You didn't make it in time for the last battle in the demon-resisting valley, so you don't know. Last time, the 3 countries relied on the defense of the capital star formation to block the invasion of the demon realm. In the battle, 3 out of 60 people died. Among them, there were 2 void refinement realm cultivators, 17 spirit severing realm cultivators, and 44 nascent soul realm cultivators. Those below the nascent soul realm. Let's not talk about them. Yes, about this. Luo Xingtian hesitated and said through voice transmission, I have also heard that the capital star formation is a defensive formation. It is not as good as the Pleiades demon devouring immortal formation that I brought. But since the Pleiades demon devouring immortal formation is an offensive formation, sacrifices are inevitable. Oh, Deputy Leader Luo, you are wrong. Taoist Master Xianxia shook his head and said, I am not talking about the problem of the offensive formation. The best defense is offense. I know this. And to be honest, if we still use the capital star formation this time, I am afraid that there will be more casualties. Hiss. Luo Xingtian took a breath of cold air and said anxiously, Senior, you mean the space meridian here is getting more and more stable? It can become a space passage? The strength of the demons attacking this time has increased greatly? That's right. Taoist Master Xianxia nodded. This is the problem that I found in the last 3 great battles. With that said, Taoist Master Xianxia pointed at the big formation below him and explained, There are 365 top cultivators of the 3 countries and the Huan country in this Pleiades demon-devouring immortal formation. They are all nascent soul realm cultivators, spirit-severing realm cultivators, and void refinement realm cultivators. But now, 121 of them have died. It is twice as many as the last time. This can't help but alert me. If this continues to develop, after 1,000 years, won't these 300 cultivators be killed? Even if he could withstand it after 1,000 years, what about after 2,000 years? Do we still have enough cultivators to set up this array in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation? I really don't know. Senior, you're right. Luo Xingtian's expression changed as well. 1,000 years will pass in the blink of an eye. We have to plan ahead. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to travel from the Immortal Alliance to the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. Our Immortal Alliance has countless means, but none of them can pass through the innate restrictive formation of the Million Mountains. Even if we do pass through, more than half of them will die when we reach the world of soul cultivators. Less than 1 in 100 can follow me to the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. Alas, the method to build the transmission array in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation has been lost, let alone such a long transmission distance. Immortal Xianxia shook his head slightly and said, This is not realistic. When Luo Xingtian heard this, he smiled faintly and said, It's fine even if you don't have a teleportation array. Since Senior already knows about the changes in the space meridian, we should prepare as soon as possible. In fact, in Junior's opinion, the Imperial Demon Valley of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation is a solid barrier. Moreover, there are many restrictions in the space meridian. Ordinary demons, demon soldiers, and demon beasts can't enter. Those who exceed the strength of a demon commander can't enter either. Only demon generals, special demon soldiers, and demon commanders can pass through the space meridian. This is really beneficial for our human race. Senior, I'm afraid you don't know what kind of disaster it will be if hundreds of millions of demon beasts or demon soldiers rush into the Imperial Demon Valley, right? Hee hee, although I haven't seen it, how can I not know after hearing what Deputy Leader Luo said? If that happens, the Qi Refinement and Foundation Establishment disciples of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation will rush in. We don't have to rely on the cultivators above the nascent soul stage to resist. Yes, after today, Lord Alliance Leader has to think carefully about how to mobilize these low-level disciples. Luo Xingtian didn't hide it and transmitted his voice. Although the great war of immortals and demons in the Imperial Demon Valley is very important, the leaders of the various sects didn't participate, and the low-level disciples of the various sects didn't participate. Even many cultivators don't particularly understand the great war of immortals and demons. Except for the dozens of days of the great war of immortals and demons, the various sects didn't mention this matter. This is not good for the future war situation. Indeed. Taoist Master Xianxia nodded. With the experience of defeating the Immortal Alliance, the 3 kingdoms of cultivation will definitely. Not good. Just as Taoist Master Xianxia was speaking, the black-red fog suddenly froze, and the obscure sound also stopped. Then, a red brilliance flashed out of the fog. Woo-woo! Ka-ka-ka! A spear-shaped demonic weapon that was over 10 feet long suddenly shot out, emitting a terrifying whistling sound. Moreover, the demonic spear was so sharp and so fast that it pierced through the air, causing the already unstable space to collapse inch by inch.
The person closest to the demonic spear was a young female cultivator. That female cultivator obviously discovered it later than Taoist master Xianxia. When the demonic spear had rushed into the distance of 10 feet, she hurriedly rubbed her hands together, and a magic weapon like a jade hairpin rushed out. A blue wave emerged from the female cultivator's body, and the fine lines like scales protected the space of 10 feet around the female cultivator. However, before the demonic spear could hit this layer of protection, the collapsed space fluctuations had already rushed close. With a crisp ka-ka-ka sound, the scale-like ripples produced even finer cracks. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and the jade hairpin was immediately broken under the impact of the demonic spear. The female cultivator's face changed greatly, and her figure flashed, wanting to teleport out. However, the space around her was shrouded by the demonic spear, so how could she teleport? Swoosh swoosh. A sharp sound rang out, and the female cultivator's protective magic weapon was broken. The flesh on her left arm instantly disappeared, and the demonic spear whistled past her. Alas, one force breaks 10,000 techniques. Taoist master Xianxia's heart relaxed when he saw that the female cultivator only had her left arm broken. He sighed and said, Chongbai Sec's Fairy Li Yu has escaped a disaster. Fairy Li Yu has already reached the early stage of void refinement, Luo Xingtian next to him said with a smile. But the one who threw the demonic spear should have the cultivation of a devil monarch. This guy can't pass through the space meridian, so I'm afraid he will use the demonic spear to vent his anger. This is probably the last blow before the space meridian closes. Yes, it should be so. Taoist master Xianxia looked again. At this time, the entire great array was flashing with golden brilliance. Layers of protection appeared in front of the demonic spear out of thin air. Although these layers of protection were easily broken, they seemed to be continuous and slowly blocked the demonic spear in mid-air. Clang! 2 sword sounds rang out, and a huge red sword that was also 10 feet long appeared in mid-air. With a boom, it slashed the demonic spear. Waves of chi surged from the demonic spear, shaking the brilliance of the great golden array. In the middle of the demonic spear, traces of black chi flickered, and thousands of fine cracks appeared in the space. The demonic spear was actually cut into 3 pieces by the huge sword. Good, Luo Xingtian clapped his hands and said, Void Heaven Sword School's Jianghu Jiang spirit sword is becoming more and more fierce. Humph, such a good demonic spear. It's a waste. A void refinement cultivator next to him looked at the huge sword that had transformed into a human and waved his hand. The demonic spear that had been cut into 3 pieces fell into his hand, and he said coldly, Hee hee. Taoist brother Ji Feng. Luo Xingtian laughed and said, You are now the deputy union leader of the Immortal Alliance, not Ji Feng Zi of the Magnificent Spirit Sect. The difference between Dao and sword can't be revealed casually. Deputy union leader, I won't decline your guidance. Ji Feng Zi said faintly and then bowed. Lord union leader, this junior will take this subordinate to look around. Now that the demonic path in the Imperial Devil Valley is about to be closed, there might be a lot of fish that escape the net hiding in the Imperial Devil Valley. And go. Taoist Master Xianxia waved his hand with a smile. This matter is more important. If the demons sneak into the 3 countries of cultivation, wouldn't our Imperial Devil Valley have fought in vain? Ji Feng Zi left, and Luo Xingtian accompanied Taoist Master Xianxia to look at the demonic chi inside the Pleiades devil-devouring immortal formation that was getting smaller and smaller. It seemed that the war had already ended, but to their surprise, the real story had just begun. Somewhere in the Imperial Devil Valley, a Taoist with white hair and a youthful face was wearing a Taoist robe. He was holding a Rui scepter in his hand and was standing quietly in mid-air. There was a faint light in his eyes as he looked at the black and red fog around him. The fog was already a little messy, and it was obvious that there had been a fight just now. Although the Taoist master wanted to stand upright in the air, he couldn't help but stoop a little. His white hair was a little messy, and his face, which was supposed to be as rosy as a baby's, was no longer clean. Instead, it looked a little flushed. The expression in the Taoist's eyes was a little inconsistent with his quiet figure. There were traces of anger, indignation, and even more fear. If one looked closely, although this Taoist was standing calmly in the air, his body was trembling uncontrollably. However, it was also covered by his wide Taoist robe, so it was not obvious, however. His hand that was holding the Rui scepter tightly and the veins on his forehead were gradually showing,
and his emotions were exposed.
The Taoist's eyes turned sharply, and his divine sense swept out like a waterfall.
Then he raised his snow-white eyebrows, raised the Rui scepter and said coldly, "Come out, this poor Taoist has already seen you." However, after this Taoist said a few words, the black and red fog was silent, and there was no movement at all. Humph! The Taoist did not say anything more.
He waved the Rui scepter, and instantly, all the chi of heaven and earth around the Rui scepter gathered, and the chi of heaven and earth within a few hundred feet was sucked dry.
A shadow that was a few times bigger than the Rui scepter gradually formed in the air.
When the shadow solidified, the Taoist waved gently, and the shadow flew out silently. The Taoist even said, "The people of the mortal realm have always done things openly. Since you did not come out, don't blame me for being impolite." Chapter 3153. Just as the Taoist finished his sentence, the Rui scepter's phantom plunged into the black-red fog. A huge hole appeared in the fog due to the Rui scepter's phantom. Following that, an earth-shaking rumble sounded from the fog, sweeping away the black-red fog. At the end of the fog was an extremely burly man leaning against a mountain rock. He was 20 feet tall and emitted a pitch-black fog.
The fog wrapped around the burly man, and in the black fog, some scarlet flames were emitted from the burly man's body.
They entangled with the black fog, forming an armor similar to the black-red fog. The burly man looked similar to a human, but if one looked carefully, the edges of the burly man's body were formed from slightly retracting black fog. It isolated his true body from the heaven and earth spiritual energies of Demon Resistance Valley. There was also the burly man's face that was as black as charcoal. His scarlet eyes were filled with bloodlust. All of this meant that the burly man was not the person from the human world that the Taoist had mentioned in the sky.
Ha ha ha.
Cough cough. The burly man laughed loudly. Before he could finish laughing, he coughed and held his chest with his hand. He panted rapidly, as though he had suffered serious internal injuries. As he panted, sparks mixed with wisps of black fog rushed out of his mouth and nose.
Upon closer inspection, the burly man's armor had indeed cracked in many places.
However, it was obscured by the thick black fog. And at his waist, there was a hole the size of a skull. Black blood was flowing out, and there were also sparks in the black blood. Ha ha ha, people from a human world are only Taoist you. Who are you? Why did you only chase after me? The burly man didn't seem to be hurt by the Rui scepter's shadow. He jumped out of the black and red fog shakily and flew in the air with his body tilted. He said with a grin, but his words were very unfamiliar. He almost spat out each word awkwardly. "The rules of my human world state that we have to report our names in front of 2 armies. How can we be like your fiend world, fighting as soon as we arrive? If you hadn't ambushed I and injured I, how could I have chased after you alone?" The Taoist priest seemed to be a little impatient.
After saying that, he waved the Rui scepter and shouted, "Both sides are grim fiends.
It doesn't matter who I kill. Why bother asking for the reason? I am Reverend Sun Lu of the Changbai sect. Which devil of the devil realm are you?" As the Rui scepter moved, it stirred up countless amounts of heaven and earth origin energy in the air. An inexplicable trajectory appeared in the Taoist's hand as he waved the Rui scepter. The trajectory streaked across the space, tearing it apart. A half-acre Rui scepter phantom appeared once again, but this time, it was even more powerful. It actually stirred up even more heaven and earth origin energy. It was like a kind of spirit tide, surging and surging towards the people of the demon world. Hee, just in time. This venerable is the fiend world's fiend General Chi Ku. It's precisely because I want to experience the methods of your mortal world's experts.
As the burly man spoke, the black aura around him surged.
His entire body seemed to expand, gradually growing to about 10 feet. Hee. A strange sound came from Chi Ku's mouth. His devil chi stretched out like tentacles, and he waved his hand with difficulty. A pitch-black devil blade flashed in his hand. With a light wave, the blade trembled slightly, and countless tiny spatial cracks appeared. There was also another strange mark on the tip of the devil blade. This Chi Ku actually wanted to use a devil blade to fight against a half-acre spirit tide. Hiss. Reverend Sun Lu sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes flashed with a fanatical light, and the flush on his face became even more intense. However,
Just as the Rui scepter in his hand was about to burst forth with brilliance, he frowned slightly.
His body suddenly became illusory.
From behind him, a sharp black light flashed, and a crack appeared in the space where he was standing just now.
This long crack flashed with a black and white brilliance. It was several feet long, and the brilliance of this crack rapidly closed, gradually disappearing. When Reverend Sun Li's figure flashed again about 10 feet in front of him, a strange hoarse voice sounded.
Hee hee. You really are a famous expert in the human world.
Just now, there was a fool who called herself Nishan who died under my eroding ruler. You actually managed to dodge it? Taoist Master Sun Lu looked over angrily.
Behind where he had been standing, there was another slender figure.
The figure's face was blurry, and he couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman.
The figure was holding something similar to a tree branch in its hand, and it was saying strange things with a smug look on its face. Although that person's tone was not small, looking at his red clothes-fitting armor, which was also tattered, and traces of dark red devil chi were constantly seeping out.
Presumably, his injuries were not light. Something's not right. This neither male nor female demon glanced at his own devil weapon.
Suddenly, he pointed at Reverend Sun Lu in disbelief and shouted, You were clearly injured by me just now.
How could you dodge it? How can your body be tougher than my Devil Realm's devil generals? When Chiku looked at Reverend Sun Lu again, sure enough, Reverend Sun Li's hand was slightly covering a certain part of his Taoist robe. His body was also slightly trembling, as if he was really injured. Kill! Chiku bellowed. Hundreds of strands of devil chi rushed out of his body, sealing off the area to the left of Taoist Master Sun Lu. That devil cultivator shook his shoulder, and red devil fire soared into the sky, transforming into a devil body. Under the branch-like devil weapon, the area to the right of Taoist Master Sun Lu was filled with ferocious flames.
Ha ha ha. Even if you all come, what can you do?
Reverend Sun Lu raised his head and laughed.
Thousands of rays of light rushed out of his body.
These rays of light were as small as silk, and they bloomed like bees. These rays of light intertwined together, like pythons winding around Reverend Sun Li's body. At this time, Reverend Sun Li's body also expanded, and a Dharma body of 10 feet in size gradually emerged.
Roar!
Like a dragon's roar, the rays of light around Reverend Sun Li's body turned into the shape of a dragon, and twisted towards the jade scepter in his hand. But at this time, a strange change occurred.
Reverend Sun Li's body suddenly trembled, and the surging dragon let out a miserable roar, and quickly withdrew into Reverend Sun Li's body.
Reverend Sun Li's face changed dramatically, and his fingers trembled, as if he wanted to take something. However, just as his finger moved, before he could touch the storage bag at his waist, his expression suddenly changed drastically. His body, which was dozens of feet tall, flashed rapidly. Clearly, he wanted to turn into a void and fly away.
At this moment, a pitch-black spearhead, which was emitting black chi, flashed out from the void behind his back and pierced into his heart with lightning speed.
Bang! Reverend Sun Li's body flashed with brilliance. Obviously, his protective chi was unable to block the spearhead. His body shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the dragon-shaped brilliance disappeared. Not only that, but the green brilliance on Reverend Sun Li's Taoist robe also flourished and blocked the spearhead.
But the black chi on the spearhead was incomparably agile, like a spirit snake, and when it opened its mouth, it devoured the green brilliance completely.
Therefore the spearhead pierced deeply into Reverend Sun Li's back, as if it was piercing tofu.
It pierced through Reverend Sun Lu, and a small part of the spearhead came out from his chest. Reverend Sun Lu staggered, and without turning his head, a huge shadow appeared on his jade scepter, and with a whoosh it brushed behind him.
Kakaka! An owl-like laughter sounded, and the spearhead on Reverend Sun Li's chest disappeared at the same time. A demon general, holding a long spear as thick as a bowl, appeared behind Reverend Sun Lu. This demon general's face was black, and his flesh was blurred. It was impossible to see his true face. Facing the shadow of Reverend Sun Li's Rui, this demon general's face was full of astonishment. His figure retreated slightly, and his mouth spoke half-cooked words like Chi-ku. The people of the human world are indeed our food. What I saw before was a weak body, and it was tasteless for me to chew. This guy's body is somewhat interesting. Even after being stabbed by me, he still has such strength. I'm afraid that his muscles are strong, and his chewing is tasty. Reverend Sun Li's Rui.
Sure enough, it was only halfway through, and the brilliance suddenly dimmed, and the huge shadow gradually shrank back into the scepter. At this moment, Reverend Sun Lu did not bother to say anything. He gritted his teeth, and narrowed his eyes at the three demons who surrounded him in a triangle, and the light of revenge faintly appeared in his eyes. Reverend Sun Lu.
How is it?
You've killed many disciples of my demon world, and now you know the taste of being killed. I remember that there's a saying in the human world, those who kill will be killed by others.
Is it like this?
Chica coldly said, holding the demon saber in his hand. You invaded my human world, killed my people, and ate my people. Killing you will be accumulating merit.
Reverend Sun Li's voice was getting weaker, but his spirit was rising. Chiku, why are you being so long-winded with him?
Capture his nascent soul, and we'll share his blood essence.
The time for the demon gate to close is coming.
The last man to appear raised his spear and said impatiently. Good, Chica smiled, and a long blood-red tongue came out of his mouth, and licked the side of his mouth. With a whoosh, the thin and tall blood shadow, whose face could not be seen clearly, swung his hand, and a fishnet-like net, shining with blood-red brilliance and suffused with black gas, covered Reverend Sun Li's head. Reverend Sun Li's body gradually withered, and a five-colored brilliance appeared above his head.
An infant's nascent soul, whose face was exactly the same as Reverend Sun Li's, appeared above Reverend Sun Li's head.
Reverend Sun Li's nascent soul was wearing an extremely exquisite armor, and there was also a small scepter in his hand.
Seeing the nascent soul leave his body, Chiku and the others unconsciously drooled.
Go, the thin and tall blood shadow pointed his finger, and the black net fell towards the nascent soul. Reverend Sun Li's nascent soul did not seem to panic, nor did it prepare to teleport away as the three demon generals thought.
They only heard the nascent soul sneer, revealing endless ridicule. Chapter 3154.
Seeing Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul suddenly grow, it was as if someone had blown a lot of air into his stomach. This is bad, this guy. How can he self-destruct his nascent soul?
Chiku was shocked.
There were too few self-destructing nascent souls.
Who wouldn't want to escape if they could teleport? Chiku cursed and turned to leave.
The large man holding the spear also spat and cursed. Bad luck, I didn't say I was going to capture your soul essence. If you explode your nascent soul, even your soul essence won't be able to escape. So how can you talk about reincarnation? You're harming others without benefiting yourself.
As he spoke, he also wanted to leave.
But just as the two were about to turn around, a faint golden light flashed from Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul. The two unconsciously glanced. A dragon-shaped thing was held in Taoist Master Sun Li's left hand. Long you. Both of them were shocked, and the same thought came to their minds. How can this thing fall into the hands of a human cultivator?
That's right.
The demon general, who was neither male nor female, yelled. It's the Dragon Jade. If it wasn't for the Dragon Jade's dragon body, how would he have been able to block my attack? Quick! This thing is a gift from the heavens. It's our chance.
Hearing this, how could Chiku and the others shrink back?
Although the self-destruction of nascent souls was a bit troublesome, it was impossible to take their lives. Chiku shouted, Taoist Yuna, I'll let you see my means. As he spoke, Chika's entire body instantly became thinner. A pitch-black flame emerged from his hand, and his body suddenly turned into a cloud of mist. Faster than the wind, he slapped down on Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul. The man with the long spear didn't hesitate. He put away the spear in his hand and punched himself in the chest. The bloody face completely rushed out, as if spitting out a mouthful of blood, also sprinkled towards Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul. Since Chi-He and Sun Lu could see it, the blood shadow, who was neither male nor female, could see it even more clearly. He was even closer. Although he was extremely regretful of his slip of the tongue, he waved his hand, and the black flames turned into a black net about 10 feet wide. He wanted to imprison Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul before it exploded. Poof! He spat out a mouthful of blood essence onto the Rui scepter in Taoist Sun Li's nascent soul's hand. With a loud bang, the Rui scepter shattered into powder. The Yuan Qi that burst out from the powder was like a fuse, igniting Taoist Sun Li's nascent soul.
It's too late.
Without waiting for Chiku and the other two to think, Taoist Master Sun Li's Yuanying flashed a few times before exploding with a bang. This was the self-destruction of a Yuanying.
In an instant, it set off a boundless hurricane within the valley. The already unstable space, at this moment, walala. The window paper that was already riddled with holes was blown apart by the hurricane. Several huge holes were formed in the air nearby. If it was an ordinary Yuanying self-destruction, the power might not be so great. However, Taoist Master Sun Lu was not an ordinary Yuanying cultivator. He had the dragon jade in his hand. Not only was his body tougher than a demon general's, the amount of heaven and earth spirit chi his nascent soul could hold was several times that of an ordinary person. In particular, this nascent soul was as tough as the body. When it exploded, the power was more than 10 times that of an ordinary Yuanying. In addition, the 3 demon generals had set up a restriction around 10 feet around them. In this small space, the power of Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul self-destruction was too powerful. On the ground behind Taoist Master Sun Li's nascent soul, a hole suddenly appeared and gradually tore open. Just as the hole appeared, a golden light flashed, and the dragon jade in Taoist Master Sun Li's hand shot into the gradually expanding oval-shaped hole without anyone noticing. Under the effect of the power of space, the hole gradually shrank. And when it was only about 10 feet away, a naked, skinny man flew out from the hole and floated straight into the distance, then slowly fell down. Chi-He and the other 2 from the demon realm were greedy and wanted to take the initiative. But if they knew the common sense of the human realm, they would know that they had tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Just as they saw that the situation was hopeless, they turned around and tried to hide in the void, but the strong energy storm and the swift and violent self-destruction had already caught up with them. They were already seriously injured and were at the end of their rope. The power of Taoist Master Sun Li's self-destruction was more than 10 times that of an ordinary Yuanying. The moment they came into contact with this power, their armor collapsed, revealing their bodies. Just as they tried to resist, it was as if they were hit by an infinite hammer. They only lasted for a moment before they turned into a pool of flesh and blood. When the 3 bodies collapsed, a faint blood shadow flashed out and tried to escape again, but the hole that just formed mercilessly sucked 2 of the blood shadows in. Ah! 2 screams came out from the hole, and in the blink of an eye, there was no more sound. The last blood shadow looked at the hole not far away in panic, and quickly flew into the depths of the valley. Just as the blood shadow flew away, the hole that Taoist Master Sun Lu had torn open on the ground slowly closed and disappeared. However, Taoist Master Sun Li's self-destruction was really powerful. In the void, after the hole closed, countless space bubbles expanded and expanded like bubbles. In just a few breaths. Puff, puff, puff. Several deep piercing sounds could be heard, and several space cracks were pierced through, and rays of light rushed into the void. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. From 3 consecutive holes, a small marten rushed out and fell into the mountains. A small black dog appeared in the sky tens of thousands of miles away and also fell down. As for another hole, between 3 towering mountains, a sword embryo fell like a meteor. At the same time, far away in the sky, there was another hole that had been blasted open. Suddenly, a red light flashed, and a small 4-tailed fox jumped out from the hole. The small fox looked around in surprise, as if it was lost. Just as the fox was about to turn around and jump into the hole again, an incomparably majestic aura came from the hole. The fox's eyes seemed to be filled with panic, and it didn't dare to jump into the hole again. It looked up and directly flew into the hole that had been created by the self-destruction of the spiritual energy. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. The majestic aura quickly arrived at the edge of the hole. At this time, the hole had already shrunk to about a foot. A golden light swept out from the hole, and then with a sigh, a small silver-white wolf jumped out from the hole. It sniffed the air with its nose and directly flew into the hole. However, when the silver wolf flew out, the hole was extremely far away from the fox's previous location. Before the hole closed, another hole appeared beside it. Just as this hole appeared, a ray of light came from the other side of the hole, and a beautiful voice came from there. Quick, there's a passage here. Hello. Is there anyone home? Then a childish voice came, and then a delicate little girl stuck her head out of the hole. After looking, she immediately shrank back. Goddess, this place is very strange. Oh? It seems like it's the human world. The little girl shrank back, and another woman flashing with 5-colored light appeared in front of the hole. The woman looked and shouted in ecstasy. Human world? What human world? The little girl called Dai, or clearly didn't understand. Quick! Let's go.
The woman called Empress waved her hand, and the same 5-colored radiance enveloped the little girl. The two of them rushed into the crack and landed in midair.
Let's hurry over while the crack in space hasn't closed yet. Thank you, the merciful Holy Mother. You're really merciful. When I find it, I'll thank you again. A multicolored brilliance flashed across the sky, and the woman disappeared. The crack that had already closed suddenly swelled again for some unknown reason. However, it was only the last time that it swelled, and its position moved a few miles away. At the same time, a human figure in a black cloak flashed out of the space. This human figure only appeared on a corner of the cloak when the crack was squeezed together. This human figure didn't stop at all, and squeezed through with all his might.
Who?
With a soft sound, the crack disappeared. After the last black figure walked out of the crack, the holes in the void finally regained their calmness, gradually closing up one by one. After half a cup of tea's time, just as the last hole was about to close up, a faint shadow flashing with white holy light once again crawled out of the hole. Similarly, it was extremely surprised as it looked left and right. 2 winged figures appeared on its back, charging out of the hole diagonally. Just like the previous few groups of unfamiliar guests, it flew out of the hole that was about to close up. Not long after, the yuan qi of heaven and earth at the place where the nascent soul exploded became more and more chaotic, and the space became more and more unstable. Spatial cracks appeared one after another, but the original hole, along with Taoist Sun Lu, Qi He, and the others, had disappeared without a trace. No one knew that so many things had happened in the void in the time it took to finish a cup of tea's worth of tea's time. So many variables had come to this place. How many stories were there behind all these variables? After another incense's time, a dozen rays of light flew over from the distance. When they reached the sky, they stopped, revealing the true faces of these people. Most of them were like Taoist Sun Lu, disheveled, and many of them had injuries on their bodies. At the front was a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance. He was dressed in a white robe, and although there were some bloodstains, they were smooth. The man scanned with his divine sense and frowned. He looked around and whispered, "This should be where the spiritual energy exploded just now. Judging from this aura, it seems to be Taoist Sun Li's." Sigh. Beside him was a middle-aged Taoist who was dressed in the same robe as Taoist Sun Lu. He sighed and said sadly, reporting to the Swift Wind Alliance leader, "This is the aura of my sex-martial nephew Sun Lu." Chapter 3155. Immortal Sun Lu had a profound cultivation and hated evil. He was the backbone of the Immortal Allies. Now that he is gone, there will be one less person who can destroy evil and promote good in this world. The patrolman was Ji Fengzi. He looked at the messy spiritual qi under his feet and looked up at the void cracks in the sky that could close at any time. He said sadly, "The Utopia faction sacrificed a lot to defend against the invasion of the demonic realm. Apprentice nephew Huaishu, the people of the Immortal Allies have witnessed your sex performance. When the war is over, the Immortal Allies will reward you handsomely." Immortal Huaishu cupped his hands in front of his chest and said sadly, "Defending against the invasion of the demonic realm is the most important task of the Immortal Allies. All the other sects and factions are doing their best to defend against the invasion of the demonic realm. Our Utopia faction is just one of them. I don't dare to accept such a reward from the Alliance leader." Heh, my fellow cultivator Huanshu, you don't have to be so modest." Another old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion flew to them and said with a smile, "Judging from the aura, besides the aura of martial nephew Sun Lu, there are also 3 auras of people from the Devil Realm. Martial nephew Sun Lu killed 3 people from the Devil Realm by himself. This power is beyond our reach. Now that martial nephew Sun Lu has fallen, this glory will naturally fall to your Utopia faction. We won't make a fuss about this." Ji Fengzi nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Apprentice nephew Feng from the Celestial Ascension sect is right." Immortal Sun Lu exploded his original soul and even gave up the 6 paths of reincarnation just to kill 3 people from the demonic realm. If the Immortal Allies don't reward him for his sacrifice, wouldn't they be disappointed? Then, thank you, Alliance leader. Immortal Huaishu thought for a moment and nodded slightly. "I will go back and search for Immortal Sun Li's natal spiritual tablet. Don't be so anxious. Apprentice nephew Huaishu, you just stay here and see if Immortal Sun Lu has left anything. Ji Fengzi waved his hand and a sword light flashed under his feet. When he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something and gave Immortal Huaishu a few words. Then he said to the people beside him, "Okay, the gate of the demonic realm should be closed now. Let's search again to see if there are any survivors of the demonic realm."
Yes, thank you for your concern, Alliance Master.
Taoist Huaishu cupped his hands in thanks. Ji Fengzi waved his hand and said to the two people next to him, "Feng Shu, Chan Si Miao, you two go back and pass down the order. Ask all the disciples above the gold core stage who haven't entered the demon-resisting valley to go to the demon-resisting valley and search for our fellow cultivators one by one. All right, everything you find must be handed over to the Immortal Alliance, and the Immortal Alliance will return the items to the various sections. The Immortal Alliance token will have other rewards."
Yes, Junior obeys.
A middle-aged man about 40 years old who looked as handsome as Feng Shu flew over and said with a bow. Feng Shu from the Immortal Ascension sect and Chan Si Miao from the Immortal Music sect received orders from the Deputy Alliance leader Ji Fengzi, and returned to the Immortal Alliance's temporary encampment in the middle of the Imperial Devil Valley. Immediately after, he issued an Immortal Alliance order, summoning all the Golden Core stage and above disciples of the various sects to enter the Imperial Demon Valley and conduct a search. It turned out that the guards outside the Imperial Demon Valley were all disciples of various sections. At this time, most of the disciples had entered the Imperial Demon Valley, and only a few disciples with insufficient cultivation were scattered outside the valley. The search had been going on for 10 days. The battle in the Imperial Demon Valley was very tragic.
If the people of the Devil Realm were not killed by the cultivators of the human realm, then the cultivators of the human realm were devoured by the people of the Devil Realm.
There were no casualties. Instead, they picked up a lot of magic treasures and other things that were lost. What? You found a naked person? Therefore, when a disciple came forward to report that he found a naked cultivator, Feng Shu of the Immortal Ascension sect was extremely surprised and blurted out. But then, Feng Shu realized his gaffe. He looked at Chan Si Miao of the Immortal Music sect, who had a smile at the corner of his mouth, and laughed at himself. "Look at me, my head has been so tight these days. I almost forgot myself." Then he looked at the disciple who came forward to report and scolded, "What's so strange about being naked? It's just that his clothes were torn in the fight." When he said the word torn, it was unknown what Feng Shu thought of, but he unconsciously revealed a trace of a smile. He was somewhat absent-minded. "But," the disciple argued, "that person is still alive." "What?" Feng Shu and Chan Si Miao were stunned. They both stood up and said in unison, "There are still people alive in the Imperial Demon Valley?" "Yes, we also don't understand.
We searched the valley for more than 10 days, but there were only badly mutilated corpses.
We didn't see anyone injured, so we were surprised and what?" Chan Si Miao was also interested and asked curiously.
"And this person didn't have any injuries."
The disciple's face revealed a strange expression. He said, "Also, we were afraid that he was a senior from some sect, so we went forward to check his injuries. But we found that this person was actually only at the chi refining stage."
"That's impossible. Absolutely impossible."
Feng Shu heard this and shook his head. Only nascent soul cultivators can enter the Imperial Demon Valley. This has been the rule of the Immortal Alliance for millions of years. Even if you Golden Core disciples came, you would only be snacks for the people of the Devil Realm. How could you let a chi refining disciple in? Maybe he's a disciple that the Alliance leaders brought? Chan Si Miao frowned. How could the Alliance leaders be so reckless? Feng Shu waved his hand and said, "It's useless to say more. Let's wait and see first." As he spoke, he asked the disciple to bring the person in. However, when the disciple turned around, Feng Shu suddenly asked, "Where did you find this person?" "Senior Feng, that person is not in the depths of the Imperial Demon Valley." The disciple naturally understood Feng Shu's meaning and answered without hesitation.
Then, he thought for a moment and said hesitantly, "If you think about the surroundings, it's not far from the place where Reverend Sun Lu died."
The place where Reverend Sun Lu self-destructed? Chan Si Miao was curious.
He looked at Feng Shu and said, "If that's the case, with the power of Reverend Sun Li's self-destruction, this person doesn't seem to have any reason to survive?" At least, it's impossible for him to be unharmed. So, that means he went there after Reverend Sun Le self-destructed? Feng Shu nodded and said, otherwise, when Reverend Huashu of the Utopia faction cleaned up the mess, there's no way he wouldn't be discovered. Suddenly, Chan Si Miao's expression changed drastically. He said in horror, could it be? Feng Shu also realized and said anxiously, no. At that time, the gate of the demonic realm was not closed. Could it be that he's from the demonic realm? The disciple smiled bitterly and said, seniors, that person is clearly from the mortal realm, and, the cultivation of the qi refining stage. Chan Si Miao's expression was slightly embarrassed. Then he smiled and said, the people of the demonic realm are getting more and more shrewd. Maybe they're imitating our demonic realm cultivation skills. Yes, quickly bring that person in. Feng Shu also agreed. Not long after, the disciple brought in a thin and tall person. The person was wearing a Taoist robe that was stained with blood. His shiny head was drooping, and his slender arms were exposed outside of his Taoist robe. When the disciple put the person on the ground, Feng Shu looked at the person's beardless face without eyebrows and closed eyes. After a while he said softly, fellow cultivator Chan, could it be that he's not from the demonic realm? Instead, he's from the Buddha? Before Feng Shu could finish, Chan Si Miao shook his head and said in a low voice, as far as I know, the bald head might not be theirs. Also, I've never heard that they don't even have eyebrows. Yes, Feng Shu nodded and said, this person's cultivation is indeed at the qi refining stage, but the true qi in his meridians is a little strange. Yes, I think so too. This amount of true qi should be at the foundation establishment stage, but why hasn't it liquefied yet? I'm afraid it's a good-for-nothing disciple of some sect. Stuck at the foundation establishment stage? Chan Si Miao said with a smile. Fellow cultivator Chan, even if it's a good-for-nothing disciple, they definitely wouldn't throw him into the demon-resisting valley. This is clearly against the rules of the Immortal Alliance. Feng Shu shook his head. By the way, isn't this person uninjured? Why didn't you wake him up? Feng Shu looked at the disciple and asked, I've already stimulated this person's meridians. But he doesn't know at all. The disciple smiled bitterly. Oh, I see. Feng Shu raised his foot and kicked the person's body. A ray of light flashed, and his dermic powers naturally shook into the person's meridians. However, the person's body shook and then stopped moving. What's going on? Feng Shu went forward as if he didn't believe in evil. He reached out and patted the person's lower dantian. However, just as his palm touched it, a trace of surprise flashed across Feng Shu's face. Just as he was about to raise his head, he immediately lowered it. When Chan Si Miao saw this, he couldn't help but be curious and asked, fellow cultivator Feng, did you discover something? No, I don't seem to have the ability to wake him up. A strange look flashed across Feng Shu's eyes. Then he said with a smile, why don't we put him at the back first and wait for the alliance leader and the others to come back and take a look together? If that's the case, I will also try. As Chan Si Miao spoke, he took a step forward. Fellow cultivator Chan, there's no need to trouble you. Look, if I use the soul-searching technique, would it be appropriate? Feng Shu was anxious and blurted out. The soul-searching technique. Chan Si Miao stopped and looked at Feng Shu, then looked at the person on the ground. He frowned and said, I am not proficient in the soul-searching technique. If you are anxious to know the ins and outs of this person, only the soul-searching technique is suitable. Then I'll have to trouble fellow cultivator Feng. It's no problem. Feng Shu seemed to be relieved and said, however, I soul-searching technique can't guarantee that I will be able to find something from this person's memories. Furthermore, there's a possibility that this person will become an idiot. This person is just a kid in the qi refining stage. How much defense can he have? With Feng Shu's spirit-severing stage cultivation, can't he read his memories? Chan Si Miao laughed and said, if fellow cultivator doesn't dare, then I can try. Chapter 3156. Feng Shu originally wanted to ask, but after hearing Chan Si Miao's words, he waved his hand and said, that won't be necessary. However, if I really turn this person into an idiot... Fellow Chan, please don't blame me. Of course not. Soul-searching techniques have always had a chance of failing. Even if the alliance leader were to come in person, he might not be able to guarantee a 100% success rate. So please proceed, fellow Taoist Feng, Chan Si Miao replied with a smile. Feng Shu nodded and glanced at the person on the ground. His right hand formed dozens of complicated seals, all of which hit the person's head. Then, he suddenly stretched out his right hand, and his index finger moved the surrounding yuan qi of heaven and earth. Circles of four-colored brilliance were born like colorful butterflies. Along with Feng Shu's finger, they pressed on the person's forehead. However, in an instant, Feng Shu's originally relaxed expression became serious. Slowly, it turned into a kind of mockery. He snorted from his nose and took out his index finger. He turned to look at Chan Si Miao and shook his head. I have embarrassed myself. This person has really become an idiot. In his memory, there is nothing. I'm afraid that just now Chan Si Miao didn't seem to be surprised, but the disciple next to him exclaimed. Then, Feng Shu's sharp gaze swept over him and he immediately lowered his head. Feng Shu, his eyelids moved. The moment the disciple lowered his head, he actually saw the person's eyelids move slightly. This time, Feng Shu didn't dare to move. He just stood to the side and watched quietly. Sure enough, in less than 10 minutes, the person finally opened his eyes. He first looked around, then sat up. He looked at the three people next to him and asked, "You? Who are you? Where is this place?" Feng Shu smiled and said, "This is the Imperial Demon Valley." "Who are we? Don't you know?" "Imperial Demon Valley?" the person muttered. He looked at Feng Shu and shook his head. "Who are you? How would I know?" "Then, who are you?" Chan Si Miao smiled. "Yes, who am I?" The person was stunned and said this sentence inexplicably. Then, he seemed to be talking to himself. "Who can I be? If I knew who I was, would I not tell you?" This person was naturally Zhang Xiaohua, who had floated out of the void crack. However, his memories had been sealed by the bracelet in the void. Now that Feng Shu had searched his soul, how could he have any memories? Forget it. Since I don't know his name, there's no need to think about it anymore. Feng Shu understood in his heart that there might be a problem with his soul-searching technique. He waved his hand and said, "This old man wants to ask you, which sect are you from? Why are we in the Imperial Demon Valley?" "What sect?" "That's right. What sect am I from?" Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, "Sigh." Feng Shu sighed and looked at Chan Si Miao. His eyes were filled with helplessness, as if he was feeling guilty for failing to search Chan Si Miao's soul. Then, Feng Shu asked again, "Then, little guy, where did you come from? Or, what are you doing here?" "This." Zhang Xiaohua stretched out his hand and scratched his head. He smiled bitterly and said, "This? I don't remember. It seems I should know, but I just don't know." Chan Si Miao nodded slightly and turned to look at Feng Shu. His eyes were filled with schadenfreude. When Feng Shu saw Chan Si Miao's gaze, he could only smack his dry lips. He looked at the confused Zhang Xiaohua with a complicated gaze and waved his hand. "You don't even know the Imperial Demon Valley, and you don't even know where you came from. You are really an idiot. Forget it, you can leave first." Then he said to the disciple beside him, "Take him to rest and wait for orders from the Alliance." "Yes, this disciple understands." The disciple bowed and quickly left with Zhang Xiaohua. When the two of them were far away, Feng Shu's face was filled with smiles. He turned to Chan Si Miao and said, "Fellow Chan, cough cough, I've embarrassed myself in front of you." "Not at all. People make mistakes and horses stumble. This soul-searching technique has always been like this. It's convenient, but it's very harmful. I believe fellow Feng is thinking for our immortal alliance and is anxious to know this child's origin. That's why you came up with this plan." Chan Si Miao replied with a smile. Hee, fellow Chan's words are exactly what I'm thinking." Feng Shu sighed. It's really strange that such a person with such low cultivation suddenly appeared in the Imperial Demon Valley. I'm afraid he's a monster from the demon realm. That's why, as Feng Shu spoke, he wanted to say something but hesitated.
If that's the case, fellow Feng can rest assured.
The people of the demon realm have been fighting with our human realm for so long. The meridians and bodies of the people of the demon realm are completely different from those of the human realm. This person is obviously from the human realm. Moreover, his meridians have the Qi refinement realm's true Qi. How can the demon realm imitate this? Hearing Chan Si Miao mention the true Qi in Zhang Xiaohua's meridians, the corner of Feng Shu's right eye twitched slightly. Then he chuckled and said, "That's good. I'm just afraid that it's a new method from the demon realm. That's why I'm anxious." I know. Fellow Feng, you don't have to worry about it. If the alliance leader asks, I will definitely bear with it. Chan Si Miao said with a righteous look. Then, I'll thank fellow Chan. Feng Shu bowed. It's fine, it's fine. If it wasn't for my low cultivation, I would have done it too. Chan Si Miao returned the greeting. However, Feng Shu didn't relax because of Chan Si Miao's sharing of the burden. Instead, he looked outside and said hesitantly, But what? Could it be that fellow Feng is worried about me? Besides, it's just a little Qi refinement kid. Chan Si Miao was displeased. No. Feng Shu hurriedly waved his hand. After thinking for a moment, he gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, Fellow Chan, it's not that I don't trust you, but I don't trust others. Others? Chan Si Miao was slightly stunned and asked curiously, Who is this others? Feng Shu sighed and waved his hand. A restriction was formed. Then, he walked to a chair and sat down. He picked up a small transparent red fruit from the jade table and threw it into his mouth. After chewing it a few times, he said with a smile, Chan Si Miao, you and I have a deep friendship. Why are you pretending to be confused? Chan Si Miao seemed to be even more confused. He also walked to the table and sat down. He also picked up the small red fruit and ate a few. Then he looked up at Feng Shu and said with a smile, I don't know what you're talking about. I just used the soul-searching technique on a kid in the Qi refinement realm and turned him into an idiot. He just lost all his memories and didn't hurt his life. Well, even if his life was hurt, who would say anything? That was then and this is now. If it were any other time, no one would say anything. But now, it's really hard to say. Feng Shu said mysteriously. Then, seeing that Chan Si Miao was still confused, he felt a little disappointed and said in a low voice, Our immortal alliance has always been loose. It only shows its effect when the people of the demon realm attack our human realm. Normally, it is just an empty shell. Feng Shu listened and looked at Chan Si Miao's expressionless face. He said again, But why are Kunlun sex immortal Xianxia, Taiqing sex immortal Huanhua, and splendid sex Ji Fengzi all fighting for the position of immortal alliance leader? Isn't that obvious? I'm not a person who only meditates. Of course I know about this. Chan Si Miao said unhappily. Isn't it because, every time the immortals and demons fight, the immortal alliance's resources in the demon-resisting valley are allocated by the alliance leader? There's a lot of tricks in this. Isn't that so? Today, the Dawn Rain continent is lacking in resources. We don't have the advantages of ancient cultivation. Which sect, which disciple isn't worried about spirit stones and spirit pills? In addition, every 1,000 years, the demon realm invades our human realm and consumes a lot of resources. The path of cultivation is getting more and more difficult. The sword cultivators of the Huan country also attack the 3 countries of cultivation from time to snatch resources. Fortunately, we've already cultivated to the soul-forming stage. If we work harder, we'll reach the void refining stage. It's just that the minor heavenly tribulation from the soul-forming stage to the void refining stage is not easy to pass. Once we pass it, it'll be easier for us to reach the void refining stage and form synthesis stage. Feng Shu nodded slightly and changed the topic. But us younger disciples are in trouble. Exactly. Every time the Immortal Alliance fights against the demon realm, it consumes a lot of resources. But who can say for sure? After every war, the Alliance leader's sect always has 1 or 2 outstanding people. What does this mean? Also, the fellow cultivators who died in the demon-resisting valley. For example, Sun Lu Zhenren from the Utopia faction exploded his nascent soul. His magic weapons, elixirs, rare materials. Who knows if they're all destroyed?
The Vice Alliance leader only asked Sun Luzhenren to take care of them. There's bound to be a mistake. If they're picked up by other disciples and handed to the Immortal Alliance, who would know that they belong to Sun Luzhenren from the Utopia faction? But those things belong to Sun Luzhenren himself. Sun Luzhenren probably doesn't know about them. Even if he wants to ask the Immortal Alliance for them, he has no basis. Chan Simiao said disdainfully. But he can't blame the Immortal Alliance. He might blame the disciples who are searching for them. He might even blame you and me. Feng Shu said mysteriously. How is that possible? Chan Simiao almost jumped up and said, what does this have to do with us? Fellow cultivator Chan, I'm just guessing. Sun Luzhenren might not think so. Feng Shu waved his hand and said, however, while we shouldn't have the intention to harm others, we should always be vigilant. What do you mean? Chan Simiao asked curiously. We're indebted to the Vice Alliance leader of the Strong Wind Alliance for giving us the task of searching. I wonder how many people are jealous. Fellow cultivator Feng, you mean? Chan Simiao seemed to understand. He stared at Feng Shu and asked without blinking. Seeing Chan Simiao's reaction, Feng Shu's expression didn't change. He nodded slightly and said, yes, just as I thought. This Qi refining kids matter is not a big deal. But if someone uses it as an issue, this issue is very profound. Is this necessary? Chan Simiao almost jumped up. Chapter 3157. Fellow Taoist Chan, calm down, Feng Shu smiled and said. This is just my guess. However, we'd rather believe it than not. Then, according to Brother Feng, what should we do? Chan Simiao seemed to have sensed the seriousness behind this matter and subconsciously changed the way he addressed Feng Shu. Sai, this matter is my fault in the end. If I wasn't too confident, why would I be so long-winded? Feng Shu said apologetically, however, since things have already come to this, I think it's better to avoid trouble. What do you mean? Chan Simiao seemed to have understood something. This person is just a kid in the Qi refinement realm. Even the lowest-level disciples like us won't take him seriously. How can he attract the attention of the people from the Immortal Alliance? We'll just instruct the disciple just now to say that he is the personal attendant of the Deputy Alliance leader or someone else and let him leave on his own. Isn't that enough? Could it be that the disciple will confront the Deputy Alliance leader? We'll remind him again and say that it's the Alliance leader's verbal order. Even if he has 10 guts, he won't dare to say it out loud. Wonderful! Chan Simiao clapped and praised. We'll do as Brother Feng says. However, we still have to remind this little cultivator more. He has lost all his memories and doesn't know any vital points. He can't talk nonsense. That's easy. I've already thought about it. Give him a little benefit. He's just a kid in the Qi refinement realm. He's like an ant. He can only be happy secretly. Why would he spread it everywhere? Feng Shu smiled and said, since fellow Taoist Feng has thought about this matter so carefully, then I'll let you handle this matter. He's just a kid in the Qi refinement realm. How can 2 soul formation cultivators like us waste time with him? Chan Simiao said with a smile. Well, that's good. Since fellow Taoist Chan has no objections, I'll deal with it now. The sooner I do this, the sooner I'll be at ease. Feng Shu stood up and smiled bitterly. It's my fault. Sai, if I didn't use the soul-searching technique, why would there be so much trouble? Chan Simiao's face was full of sympathy. The ancients have a saying, the more you do, the more you make mistakes. The less you do things, the less you make mistakes. Fellow Taoist Feng, have you forgotten? Feng Shu slapped his forehead and said with a smile, I really forgot. Then, his figure flashed and turned into a beam of light that shot out of the door. Chan Simiao smiled as he watched Feng Shu leave in a hurry. He picked up a red fruit, looked at it, and put it into his mouth. In a valley in the Imperial Demon Valley, there were layers of restrictions flashing with light. Behind the restrictions was a large number of wooden houses. At this moment, the surroundings of the wooden houses were very quiet. There was no sound and no one could be seen. In a remote wooden house,
Zhang Xiaohua was frowning and sitting cross-legged. Yes, where did I come from? Who am I? He muttered to himself. I can't even remember my own name. How can I remember anything else? Where is this place? Shaking her head, Zhang Xiaohua very naturally released her divine sense. Ha! The heaven and earth spirit qi here is actually so dense? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked, but then she came to a realization. How do I know that the heaven and earth spirit qi here is dense? Could it be that, the place I came from, the heaven and earth zero spirit qi is not dense? Zhang Xiaohua's mind raced. The true qi in his body flowed, and a cultivation technique that he could not remember the name of was activated. But then, Zhang Xiaohua's face changed greatly. What is going on? The heaven and earth spirit qi here is so dense. Why can't I draw it into my body? Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense scanned the outside for a moment. He tried the cultivation technique in his body a few times, but could not draw in any heaven and earth spirit qi from the outside. Zhang Xiaohua then gave up disappointedly. Why is this? Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. Could it be that my meridians have some changes? Thinking, Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously scratched her head. Why am I bald again? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. At this time, he did not pursue the reason why she said the word again. The true qi in her meridians followed the memory in her heart and circulated a few times. She did not feel any abnormalities. Zhang Xiaohua then checked the other parts of her body. What is this? Zhang Xiaohua finally found the place that was different from her impression. Finally, she found the mysterious place behind her head. At this moment, behind Zhang Xiaohua's head, there was a space that was dozens of feet in size. The ground of that space was like an ordinary ground, with a layer of soil. On top of that space, there was a ball of golden light, slightly and slowly rotating. Just like a small sun. My mind. Why would such a thing appear? Zhang Xiaohua was completely confused. Without waiting for her to recover from the space behind her head, Zhang Xiaohua found a section of the snake-shaped ring in her body. With a thought, that curved ring actually obediently flew out of her body. Zhang Xiaohua used his hand to hold it and looked at it carefully. This was a golden object, made of an unknown material. The incomplete ring looked like the middle section of a coiling snake. There was no snake head above, nor was there a snake tail below. On this ring, there were thin scales, similar to the scales of a small fish. Tisk. Zhang Xiaohua smacked his lips and could not help but say, "How much is this worth?" Then, he scratched his head and said in confusion, "What do I mean by this sentence?" Thinking, Zhang Xiaohua immersed his divine sense into the snake-shaped ring. Who knew that the snake-shaped ring was like an ordinary object? There was no fluctuation of true qi at all. Impossible, if it's not. What kind of treasure? How can it be integrated into my body? Zhang Xiaohua could not believe it. But, he tried for a while and still did not gain any insight. He wanted to keep the snake-shaped ring. Before he could think of a way to keep it in his body, Zhang Xiaohua thought of the space behind her head. Could it be that the space is used to store things? Sure enough, Zhang Xiaohua's mind was focused. With a sweep of his divine sense, the snake-shaped ring in his hand immediately disappeared. When Zhang Xiaohua looked again, that dragon-shaped ring stayed in a corner of the space. Haha, not bad, this space can actually store things. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. The depression of not being able to gather true qi for his mental cultivation method had been driven away. Imperial Demon Valley? Where is this place? Zhang Xiaohua thought as he stood up. Releasing his divine sense, he carefully sized up the small hut that he was in. This was an extremely ordinary-looking wooden hut. The entire structure was built with wood. There was not the slightest bit of decoration. In the wooden hut, there were only a few praying mats. Other than that, there was nothing else. But when Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept across the walls of the wooden hut, there was a strong fluctuation of true qi on the walls. There were also layers of flickering talismans. Only then did he know that this wooden hut was definitely not ordinary. Standing up, Zhang Xiaohua walked to the door and pushed it open. Before he could step out of the door, a gust of bloody air assaulted his face. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly and secretly thought, What a heavy murderous aura! Then his divine sense swept across the wooden hut once and was about to sweep to the front.
You're out. A voice suddenly came from behind him. Xianxia was shocked.
When he turned back to look, the door of the wooden hut beside him was open. The disciple who had brought him here earlier was standing in front of the wooden hut.
Xianxia almost screamed out in shock. Just now when he walked to the door, he had clearly used his divine sense to check. Although the wooden hut's door was open, but he did not see this disciple. Very naturally, Xianxia's divine sense swept towards that disciple again. But, as before, his divine sense was unable to see the disciple in front of him. Seeing Xianxia's divine sense sweep over, that disciple frowned slightly. Following that, he released his concealed cultivation. A strong pressure came over, almost like a mountain smashing onto Xianxia's body. In an instant, it made Xianxia dizzy and almost unable to stand steadily.
That disciple snorted coldly.
When the sound entered Xianxia's ears, it was as if it was ringing in his heart, causing Xianxia's heart to clench. You have no respect for your elders. How can you spy on others like that? After that disciple taught Xianxia a lesson, he immediately retracted his divine sense. He was still that ordinary-looking disciple.
Yes, senior brother. You are right.
Xianxia bowed and said, this one does not know proper etiquette.
I have made a fool of myself in front of senior brother.
Xianxia saw that the disciple was quite young and subconsciously said this.
Senior brother?
When that disciple heard this, he almost laughed out loud. Pointing at Xianxia with his finger he said, how can you call me senior brother? Xianxia was flabbergasted. He looked at that disciple and was very puzzled. Oh, I forgot, the disciple suddenly realized something and said. Now that you... Haha, I'd better tell you this. It's extremely rude to use your divine sense to check other people's cultivation. If you did that to me, the punishment just now was considered light. This one is wrong, please forgive. Senior. Xianxia said sincerely. He did not pay attention to the difference between divine sense and divine sense. Of course, in his impression, divine sense and divine sense should be about the same. And that's right. You are just a qi refining stage cultivator. You have to call any foundation establishment stage cultivator senior. Not to mention me, a golden core stage cultivator. Just now, you actually called this old man senior brother?
Ha ha ha, although this old man is very happy. If it was an ordinary person, perhaps they would not think so.
Do you know? Even if I kill you, no one will scold me. That's not necessary, senior. I just said the wrong thing. Xianxia was shocked. Then, don't I have to call anyone senior when I see them? I can't use divine sense to check on others. Nonsense, if you can't use divine sense, you can use other spells. What Heaven's Eye technique, Heaven's Eye technique, Heaven's Eye technique, detection technique are all possible. Others don't know. You can check as much as you want. It's better than using divine sense to provoke others. The disciple casually lectured, even if you are a low-level qi refining stage disciple, you should have already learned these basic spells. If you can't remember, go back and ask your master carefully. Chapter 3158.
Then the young disciple said with a proud smile, this old man had a fortuitous encounter in his early years and ate spirit herbs to maintain my youthful appearance.
Otherwise, wouldn't I have to wait until I reached the nascent soul stage to be able to reconstruct my appearance? So, this old man is not the senior brother you are talking about. Ha 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 ha. The disciple seemed to be very proud of his youthful appearance and couldn't help but laugh. But then he suddenly realized something and said, oh right, your divine sense is quite strange. How is it comparable to the early stage of foundation establishment? But this old man clearly detected that you are only at the qi condensation stage. The disciple asked like an old man, which sect are you from?
Xianxia spread her hands and helplessly said, this is also what this junior wanted to ask senior.
Just as the disciple was about to speak, a powerful divine sense swept over Xianxia and the young man. Seeing the two of them lock onto each other, Xianxia was shocked. The disciple's expression also changed. Just as she was about to speak, she heard Feng Shu's voice. You too, come to the front. The disciple respectfully bowed and replied, Yes, this disciple obeys. Then he turned to Zhang Xiaohua and said, Let's go. Senior Feng is looking for you. Zhang Xiaohua was a bit confused. She thought for a bit and whispered, Senior, didn't you say, we can't use our divine sense to investigate? Why did Senior Feng? Shut up. The disciple scolded, Senior Feng is a spirit-severing stage cultivator and is a famous figure in the Celestial Alliance. Our cultivation is not worth mentioning in his eyes, so how can we investigate? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She wanted to ask, but her eyes rolled and she closed her mouth. Spirit-severing stage cultivator? Let's go. The disciple took out a flying sword and threw it on the ground. He sent in a spell and the flying sword became slightly bigger. The disciple reached out and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's arm. He stepped on the flying sword and sent it flying forward. In front of Zhang Xiaohua was a tall cliff. When the disciple saw the location, he frowned, but then relaxed. He stepped forward and respectfully said, Reporting to Senior Feng, this disciple has brought this person here. Okay, you wait at the side. Feng Shu glanced at the disciple and waved his hand. Yes. The disciple quickly walked to the side and stood with his hands by his side. Senior, what business do you have with me? Zhang Xiaohua had learned to be humble. Feng Shu glanced at Zhang Xiaohua with a strange glint in his eyes. He waved his hand and set up a restriction. He then asked gently, Little fellow, do you remember where you came from? Reporting to Senior, I really can't remember. I don't know why I came here. Okay, if you can't remember, then you can't remember. Sect leader Feng said with a smile. However, this Imperial Demon Valley is the place where the human realm and the demon realm confront each other. It's not a place where little kids like you can come to play. Also, the Immortal Alliance has a strict rule. Any disciple below the Golden Core stage can't enter the Imperial Demon Valley. They have already been found and punished severely. I'm afraid. I really don't know why. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, Well, it's too late to say anything now, but Feng Shu changed the topic and said, Not many people know that you entered the Imperial Demon Valley. I'm Feng Shu from the Immortal Ascension sect. Hee. I'm also a famous person in the Immortal Alliance. Although you don't know now, you will know if you go out and ask. I like you and don't want you to delay your cultivation, so. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was surprised. She bowed again and said, Senior Feng, thank you for your kindness. I will never forget it. Haha, it's okay. I like to guide the younger generation. When I saw you, I felt that we were fated. However, although the demon gate of the Imperial Demon Valley has been closed, I still have some things to take care of. You can't stay in the Imperial Demon Valley for too long. Otherwise, I will guide your cultivation properly. Ah! Xiaohua Zhang was a little dumbfounded. This happiness seemed to have come too quickly. Seeing the surprise on Zhang Xiaohua's face, Feng Shu smiled and said, Little fellow, don't think too much. This old man doesn't plan on accepting you into the Celestial Ascension sect until you figure out which sect you belong to. Of course. If you can find your own sect and I have some friendship with your master, I don't mind accepting you into the sect. The meaning of these words was obvious. Normally, Zhang Xiaohua should take advantage of the situation to thank him or leave a way out for himself. However, when Zhang Xiaohua heard these words, it was quite awkward. He couldn't remember which sect he belonged to, but he vaguely knew that he had a sect. He couldn't help but hesitate. This hesitation made Feng Shu a little unhappy. He released his pressure and sneered, Don't tell me. I don't have the qualifications to guide you? In an instant, the powerful pressure enveloped Zhang Xiaohua. Boom! Zhang Xiaohua felt his vision turn black and there was a roar in his ears. The Feng Shu in front of him suddenly became as tall as the sky. A huge pressure, a pressure that he had never imagined before, directly pressed down on him until he was dizzy and about to faint. However, just as his limbs went soft and he was about to faint, the pressure suddenly withdrew. In front of him was Feng Shu, whose face was as warm as the spring breeze. Zhang Xiaohua's face was pale and there was a lingering fear in his heart. His lips trembled slightly and he didn't know what to say. Beg for mercy? Thank him. Feng Shu looked at Zhang Xiaohua's reaction with contempt. He was about to say something, but suddenly his expression changed slightly.
He raised his head as if looking in a certain direction. The corners of his mouth curled up and he laughed. Little guy, I am a spirit-severing cultivator.
I have the intention to guide you. It is your good fortune from your previous life. Alas, forget it. Since you don't know how to appreciate kindness, what else can I say? Wait, senior, it's not that I don't know how to appreciate kindness, but I have a sect. If I don't report this matter to my sect, I'm afraid it's inappropriate. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he resisted the strong disgust in his heart and cupped his hands. Well, what you said is not unreasonable. How about this, you leave the Imperial Demon Valley first. My Immortal Ascension sect is not near the Imperial Demon Valley, nor is it in the country of Xi. Instead, it is in the country of Meng, which borders the country of Xi. My Immortal Ascension sect is established in the Screen Gorge Mountain, which is very far from here. This storage ring has a token of my Immortal Ascension sect, as well as some spirit stones and magic weapons. This token can represent your identity and is useful when using the transmission formation. You have to keep the magic weapons well and don't let others see them. As Feng Shu spoke, he took out a storage ring and said, well, after you leave, if anyone asks, you have to evade. Just say that it is a secret of the Immortal Alliance. If you really can't avoid it, just say that you are the descendant of the Immortal Alliance's master Xianxia. No one will dare to ask again. Country of Xi? Country of Meng? Screen Gorge Mountain? Storage ring? Zhang Xiaohua was really confused. He really didn't understand these things. However, looking at the small storage ring in Feng Shu's hand and thinking about how Feng Shu had shown him his power just now, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to hesitate anymore. Although he muttered in his heart, he still took the storage ring and put it on his hand very naturally. Then, he carefully remembered Feng Shu's words and bowed. Thank you for the arrangement, senior. Well, there is a set of ordinary clothes in the storage ring. You can wear it. I don't have a Taoist robe for you. You should understand what I'm saying. You mustn't reveal to others that it was me who did it. Otherwise, I don't need to warn you about the consequences. Just the fact that you entered the Imperial Demon Valley without permission, even if I kill you later, absolutely no one will care. Speaking up to here, Feng Shu's face revealed a trace of coldness. Yes, I know. Zhang Xiaohua didn't quite understand why Feng Shu was trying his best to help him, but at the same time, he was afraid that others would see that he was helping him. Could it be that I really have an outstanding aptitude, which made him have a heart of appreciation for talent? Zhang Xiaohua's little tail unconsciously stood up. But if he didn't think so, what else could he think? Zhang Xiaohua originally appeared naked in the Imperial Demon Valley. Not to mention that he didn't have any money. Even if he didn't have an inch of clothing, he still had it. What else was there for him to think about? If he didn't listen to Feng Shu's arrangement, maybe he would be killed with a wave of his hand. Oh, in fact, there was no need to look back at all. He was afraid that the coercion would be able to settle Zhang Xiaohua. Oh my, just a disciple's cultivation was much higher than Zhang Xiaohua's. What Feng Shu and the alliance master that they mentioned, wouldn't he be able to kill someone with just a glance? I'm also not a charming beauty. What's there to be afraid of? Ayo! Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized, and seemed to think of another possibility. So he felt that Feng Shu's gaze was a little wretched. What are you looking at? As long as you know it's fine. Hurry up and change your clothes? Alliance Master. They seem to be coming back. You have to get out of the valley before they do.
Feng Shu glared at him and scolded.
But Zhang Xiaohua looked at Feng Shu with an awkward face and said embarrassedly, Senior, you look at me like this, I'm sorry. Ah. Feng Shu didn't expect Zhang Xiaohua to say so. He had a strange expression on his face and said with a smile, You little brat, I've lived for thousands of years. My grandson's grandson's grandson is much older than you. As he spoke, he waved his hand and removed the restriction. He turned to the disciple next to him and said, You're the head of the Qiu family in the Sword River Valley of the country of Xi, right? That disciple said respectfully, Senior Feng, I'm Qiu Feng of the Sword River Valley. Yes, that's right. Bai Kongzi of the Su Yan faction once told me about you. You've reached the Gold Core realm at the age of 540. Your future is limitless. Qiu Feng was excited.
He bowed and said, I don't dare to mention it in front of you.
Senior Bai Kongzi, you flatter me. Haha, being neither arrogant nor humble is the key to cultivation. If you have any questions in the future, I'm very close to you in the demon-resisting valley. You can ask me at any time. Feng Shu nodded with a smile. Chapter 3159. Qiu Feng's expression was even more exaggerated. No. Not to mention that he was only the head of a cultivation family. Bai Kongzi, who Feng Shu mentioned, was only a nascent soul cultivator. Although Feng Shu used to be friends with Qiu Feng and liked him a lot, it was unrealistic to give him guidance and support. After all, Bai Kongzi was the head of the Su Yan faction and couldn't give the Qiu family too much. Recommending Qiu Feng to the demon-resisting valley was already very generous. If he or the Qiu family wanted to stand out among the cultivators in the Immortal Alliance or the Immortal cultivators, then the guidance of a soul formation cultivator was a one-of-a-kind opportunity. Qiu Feng was dumbfounded by this opportunity that seemed to have fallen from the sky. Didn't he come to the demon-resisting valley for such an opportunity? After a while, he shook his head and came to his senses. He said happily, Thank you, Senior. If you have any errands in the future, I will do it. Haha, you don't have to do anything. Feng Shu smiled and helped Qiu Feng up. He said, You only need to do your best for the Immortal Alliance. Yes, I will follow Feng Shu's instructions. Qiu Feng nodded. Oh right, this person is a descendant of Lord Alliance Master for several generations. He secretly took Lord Alliance Master's token and sneaked into demon-resisting valley to broaden his horizons. This old man has already sent a message to Lord Alliance Master, and Lord Alliance Master has also given this old man clear instructions. As he spoke, he stopped and raised his head slightly to look outside. Qiu Feng didn't dare to say anything and just listened quietly. The Alliance Master said that this matter is neither big nor small, but it's quite tricky. The child is immature and he is in a difficult position, so he asked me to teach him a lesson. This. Qiu Feng frowned. This is difficult. Senior, how do you deal with it? Alas, what do you think? Feng Shu asked back. This. Qiu Feng smiled bitterly. What else can we do? Since the Alliance head has already told us that this person is his blood relative, then, naturally, he wants us to be merciful. If it's a junior, we'll just let him go. After all, he's just a chi refinement child. Yes, what you said is very reasonable. Feng Shu praised him. I think so too, so I avoided fellow cultivator Chan and came here alone. However, this matter, it's not convenient for this old man to go out. I can only trouble you to do it. Qiu Feng panicked and bowed. Thank you for thinking so highly of me, Senior Feng. This matter, this junior will deal with it immediately. I can rest assured with you in charge. Feng Shu nodded in satisfaction. After thinking for a moment he said, Also, what about the disciple who discovered this person with you? Senior Feng, please be at ease. They are all close to this disciple. This disciple only needs to give a slight hint, and they will definitely understand. There is no need to let them know about Lord Alliance Head's and Senior Feng's instructions. And that's true, Feng Shu said with relief. Then he beckoned to Xianxia, who had already changed her clothes, and said, Come here quickly, child. This old man has already told. He, just call me Martial Uncle Qiu. Qiu Feng replied tactfully. Oh, this old man has already told your martial Uncle Qiu. He will bring you out in a moment. Remember, go back quickly after you go out. Don't be naughty outside. Feng Shu said kindly as if Zhang Xiaohua was a child of 3 or 4 years old. Thank you for your care, Senior Feng. Zhang Xiaohua was changing her clothes while listening to Feng Shu and Qiu Feng's conversation. She knew that Feng Shu was just lying to Qiu Feng. She was grateful, but she also felt even more uneasy. Did she have any reason to deserve this soul formation expert's protection? Thank you for your trouble, Martial Uncle Qiu. Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and thanked Qiu Feng. She wanted to call him senior, but she was the descendant of that Lord Alliance head. If she could cause trouble in the demon-resisting valley, She should be someone who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How could she be too humble? Hee, I don't dare. Just now, I was rude to you. Please don't blame me, martial nephew. Qiu Feng smiled and helped Zhang Xiaohua up. However, when his eyes fell on Zhang Xiaohua's hand, the corners of his eyes twitched. He then looked away and said with a smile, "Hurry up and leave. Lord Alliance Head and the others will be back soon. If he sees you, I'm afraid he will lose face." Feng Shu said with a smile.
Yes, this disciple will leave now.
Qiu Feng said and threw out his flying sword. He grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's arm with one hand and channeled the magic power under his feet. The flying sword turned into a rainbow and headed straight for the entrance of the demon-resisting valley. A trace of an unfathomable smile appeared on the corners of Feng Shu's mouth as he watched Qiu Feng and Zhang Xiaohua leave, and then his figure transformed into a ray of light that shot towards another direction like a bolt of lightning. When they arrived at the entrance of the demon-resisting valley, Zhang Xiaohua finally understood why Feng Shu kept reminding her. It turned out, it was not easy to get out of the demon-resisting valley. At the entrance of the demon-resisting valley, there was a large array that stretched from the top of the valley all the way to the ground, covering the entire entrance of the valley tightly. Hundreds and thousands of disciples were floating above and below the array, holding all kinds of colorful magic treasures in their hands as they patrolled in mid-air. This was also because the gate to the demon realm had already been closed. If a few days ago, the disciples on duty would probably cover the sky and cover the earth, now that the gate to the demon realm had been closed for a few days, the disciples were sent out in batches to search for it. However, there was no abnormal movement. Naturally, the defense of the entrance of the valley was slack. However, when they saw Qiu Feng's sword light flying over, two disciples did not dare to be negligent and responded. "This, junior brother, may I know what business you have?" A late-stage Golden Core elder asked with cupped hands. "Senior brother, please check the token." Qiu Feng did not beat around the bush. He shook his hand and a yellow light flew to the disciple. The disciple caught it and checked it with his divine sense before passing it to the person beside him. The two of them checked it together and nodded. They threw the token back and said with a smile, "So it's junior brother Qiu Feng. May I know who the person beside you is?" However, when they saw that Zhang Xiaohua was only at the qi refining stage, they frowned. "Haha, it's not convenient for me to reveal the identity of the disciple beside me. I'm here to send this disciple out of the valley." Qiu Feng took his token and cupped his hands. "This." The disciple on duty did not feel awkward and said with a bitter smile, "Junior brother Qiu, aren't you making it difficult for me? This person is only at the qi refining stage. How can she enter the demon-resisting valley? You're bringing her out so easily. If there are any consequences, I can't bear it." The demon-resisting valley does not allow qi refining stage disciples to enter, but is there a rule that forbids them from leaving? Qiu Feng said with a smile. "This." The two disciples on duty were also at a loss for words. It was true that the demon-resisting valley forbade qi refining stage disciples from entering, but there was no rule that forbade them from leaving. However, since they could not enter, how could they leave? Haha, since the Immortal Alliance does not forbid qi refining stage disciples from leaving the demon-resisting valley, I'm sure it won't be difficult for the two of you to send this person out. But, how did this disciple enter the demon-resisting valley? The other disciple on duty asked with a frown. Did the senior brother on duty check every disciple who entered the valley? Qiu Feng asked confidently. Of course. Only Golden Core stage disciples can enter. This is the rule of the Immortal Alliance. We have to fulfill our duty. The two disciples on duty said in unison. Haha, not necessarily. Qiu Feng looked around and saw that the other disciples on duty were already looking in this direction. He did not hold back and said with a cold smile, "The higher-ups of the Immortal Alliance. Have you checked their followers and disciples one by one when they entered?" The two disciples on duty looked at each other and did not say a word. They looked at each other with bitterness in their eyes. So. Qiu Feng's mouth moved slightly, but no sound came out. Zhang Xiaohua, who was next to him, only saw the slight change in the expressions of the two disciples on duty. She could not hear what Qiu Feng said. "Sai, is this true?" One of the disciples on duty asked after Qiu Feng finished speaking. "Senior brother, if not, How do you think I, a mere golden core stage disciple, have the guts to do this? Moreover, if there is a mistake in this matter, it will embarrass them. Wouldn't we be asking for trouble? The two disciples on duty looked at each other again. Then, Xianxia felt a pressure that was even stronger than Qiufeng's. It was so strong that she could not breathe. In a hurry, an even stronger divine sense swept over. Compared to this divine sense, Xiangshua's pitiful divine sense almost did not have the courage to use it. This was like comparing a small ditch to a big river. After checking Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation and confirming that she was only a qi refinement stage cultivator and did not have any demonic aura or cultivation, they quietly stepped back and made a gap. Qiu Feng was overjoyed when he saw that the two disciples on duty didn't say anything and didn't send him off respectfully. He cupped his hands and bowed slightly. Then, he activated his magic power and the sword light flew toward the array. Before it could get close, a brilliant light enveloped Qiu Feng and a strange color appeared on his body. Then in a flash, he disappeared from their sight. Senior Brother Mu, this. How much of what Qiu Feng said is true? One of the disciples on duty sighed and transmitted his voice. Senior Brother Mu looked around and activated his sword light to fly up a little. He also transmitted his voice. Of course it's 100%. Alas, that's true. If not for the instructions of a certain higher-up in the Immortal Alliance, how could he, a mere golden core stage cultivator, be so bold? The key is which higher-up in the Immortal Alliance. This guy didn't say it clearly. That's why this is 100% true. If he said the name of the Alliance Master or any other random person, I would be suspicious. Since he had already done such a secretive thing, how could he possibly reveal it to the world? If he revealed it, it means that he is guilty and has a guilty conscience. Senior Brother Mu is right. If Qiu Feng did not reveal it, we would be less responsible. Even if there is a problem, the Immortal Alliance does not have a rule that forbids qi refinement stage cultivators from going out. What are we afraid of? Chapter 3160. Ha ha ha, junior brother. Don't worry. Even if the higher-ups know, they won't mention such a small matter. Hee, he's just a qi refinement kid. Whose little boy isn't naughty? While the two disciples on duty were discussing, Zhang Xiaohua had already arrived at the entrance of the Demon Resistance Valley under Qiu Feng's lead. This demon-resisting valley's defensive formation was truly abnormal to the extreme. After passing through so many light barriers, countless waves of energy passed through their bodies. Sometimes, Qiu Feng's token would emit light and catch the waves. Sometimes, the waves would directly sweep through their bodies and then disappear. Zhang Xiaohua didn't need Qiu Feng to explain. She knew that this was definitely the formation checking whether the people who entered the formation were from the demon realm or not. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua pass through so many checks as if nothing had happened, Qiu Feng felt more at ease. As long as Zhang Xiaohua wasn't from the demon realm, everything else would be fine. Suddenly, Qiu Feng asked, Martial niece, how are you related to the Alliance Master? This. Zhang Xiaohua was startled. She recalled Feng Shu's instructions and only smiled without saying anything. Ah, look at me. I forgot again. Qiu Feng slapped his forehead as he came to his senses. Then, Qiu Feng didn't say anything else. After sending Zhang Xiaohua out of the valley, a light flashed, and they appeared on top of a tall mountain. He cupped his hands and said, Martial niece, I can only send you here. If you have time in the future, let's meet at the Alliance Master's Qingluan Peak. Haha, okay. Thank you for sending me out, Martial Uncle Qiu. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely thank you. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and bowed. Okay, you can go now. Qingluan Peak is in the east. Don't go the wrong way. Qiu Feng smiled and patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder. Then he said inexplicably, However, Martial nephew, you'd better take care of yourself and deal with the current situation first. After saying that, he didn't explain. He urged the flying sword under his feet and rushed into the defensive formation of the demon-resisting valley. That. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, Qiu Feng flew away. What are you saying? What a strange thing. Zhang Xiaohua scratched her bald head in confusion. There.
It's this young senior.
Just now, a sword light came out from the demon-resisting valley. It's in this direction. There's no one else around. Isn't it him? Quick, ask Senior if he has anything good.
Just now the sword light returned.
Could it be for this Senior? Before Zhang Xiaohua could come back to his senses, a group of cultivators in strange clothes surrounded Zhang Xiaohua. They were old and young, handsome and ugly, and they were both men and women. Their bodies were shining with all kinds of brilliance. They were all dressed in strange clothes.
They were both men and women.
Zhang Xiaohua looked around in horror. She didn't know what to do. Seniors, why are you doing this? Zhang Xiaohua had learned her lesson. Since she couldn't check other people's cultivation, she could only call them seniors. As expected, everyone was stunned when they heard her call them seniors. When they checked Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation, they were even more confused. A white-haired old woman who was closest to Zhang Xiaohua asked with a dragon-headed walking stick in her hand, "Senior, you've already left the demon-resisting valley. There's no need to hide your cultivation, right?" "Senior?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at the old woman who was definitely in her 70s or 80s.
She touched her nose and said,
I'm really only in the qi refining stage. There's no need to hide it." "Brat, what are you doing?
How dare you tease your grandpa for no reason?"
A few of them started to curse. Many of them shook their heads slightly and turned around to ride their sword lights away. Seeing that almost everyone had left, the white-haired old woman smiled and said, "Young man, what's your name? Which sect are you from?" Zhang Xiaohua rolled his eyes and cupped his hands. "I'm Wu Ming, a disciple of Su Yan faction. How should I address you, Senior?" "Oh, so you're a disciple of Su Yan faction," the old woman said with a kind face. "I'm Fairy Fei Ying of Nanming faction. I have some friendship with Master Zhu Chenghe of Su Yan faction." "Fairy?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at the wrinkled Fairy Fei Ying and thought to himself, it's better to call her mistress. However, his heart immediately froze. "Abbess? Could it be that I know a nun?" "Nephew Wu Ming. You're so young, but you've already reached the late stage of the qi refining stage. You can be considered one of the best among the younger disciples of Su Yan faction. Why haven't I heard Master Zhu mention you before?" When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, this is bad. Just now in the Imperial Demon Valley, he felt that Master Feng was casually ordering Qiu Feng around. She even mentioned giving pointers and mentioned Su Yan faction. He thought Su Yan faction was just a small faction, and no one would know that he could pretend to be one. He didn't expect to run into someone who knew Su Yan faction as soon as he left the Imperial Demon Valley. How could Zhang Xiaohua endure this? Zhang Xiaohua panicked at first, but then he calmed down. He rolled his eyes slightly and said with a smile, "Su Yan faction has many excellent disciples, and I'm just one of them. How can I enter Senior Zhu's eyes? Maybe I'll attract Senior Zhu's attention when I've reached a higher level. Don't you think so?" Fairy Fei Ying's face was slightly red. Zhang Xiaohua's words were unintentional, but she had heard it intentionally. She thought that Zhang Xiaohua was mocking her for inquiring about the situation of Su Yan faction without permission. She was a little angry, but then she changed the topic and asked, "Great Master Wu, why are you not staying in Zhongxiu Mountain, but coming to Demon-Resisting Valley? Why did you come out of the Imperial Demon Valley?" Zhongxiu Mountain is where Su Yan faction is located. Zhang Xiaohua muttered in his heart, but he said, "I've stayed in the mountain for a long time, so I came out to wander around. Now, I'm going back soon." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Senior, I have to go back quickly. If I delay for too long, I'm afraid I'll be punished by my master." Before Fairy Fei Ying could speak, a gray-haired old man next to her frowned and shouted, "Wu Ming, Fairy Fei Ying is asking you a question. Why can't you answer properly? If we weren't in the territory of the Imperial Demon Valley, I'd definitely punish you." Zhang Xiaohua sighed and spread his hands, saying, "Alas, Senior, what's there to say? I just wanted to sneak into the Imperial Demon Valley to take a look. But I didn't expect that I would be discovered by the seniors of my faction just as I entered. And even before I entered the big formation. It's a good thing that we're familiar with each other from the same sect, so we can be considered acquaintances. That's why they let me off. Tell me, senior, this Imperial Devil Valley. Why is it that only Jindan stage cultivators can enter? Why can't Qi refining and foundation building cultivators go in? As he spoke, Zhang Xiaohua peeked at these people's reactions. He only heard Feng Shu and Qiu Feng mention spirit forming, golden core, and Qi refining. He didn't know what other realms there were. Although he didn't know why he knew that foundation building was higher than Qi refining, he just said it casually and felt nervous. That's right. Marshal Nice Xiao is right. The rule of the Immortal Alliance is too overbearing. Before the demon realm attacked, we were not allowed to enter. Since the gate of the demon realm has been closed and their golden core cultivators can enter, why can't we foundation building cultivators enter? We can only wait outside the Imperial Demon Valley and see if there are any good opportunities. Zhang Xiaohua was very curious. After thinking for a while, he couldn't help but ask, Senior, are there any good opportunities these days? Not at all, the Demon Gate has just been closed. The Golden Core cultivators have just entered the Imperial Demon Valley for a few days. Although some daring disciples sneaked out, they didn't bring many things out. There are so many low-level disciples outside the Imperial Demon Valley. How can I fight them? If there are some benefits, I will have to wait for a few more days. Zhang Xiaohua understood a little and said with a smile, There have been some movements these days. Won't there be more in a few more days? When most of the Golden Core cultivators come out of the valley, won't there be more things? Alas, that's true, but many of the rare materials of the demon realm, many damaged magic weapons and other things, have been handed over to the Immortal Alliance by the Golden Core cultivators, or kept in their own sections. The things that can be circulated are already some defective ones.
The old man sighed and said with some envy, You are so lucky.
As soon as you entered, you met the elders of our sect. Not to mention that you escaped with your life, which is 100 times better than those who lost their lives before. In the future, your elders, if they get any treasures, you can be considered to be in a favorable position. Zhang Xiaohua listened and secretly thought, It turns out that there were bold disciples who sneaked into the Imperial Demon Valley before. However, the array of the Imperial Demon Valley is so powerful. How can the foundation building cultivators go in without a token? It would be strange if they didn't lose their lives. But, come to think of it, how did I get in there myself? Why don't I remember at all? Just as she was thinking, Fairy Fei Ying said, Master Wu, are you still going to wait here? No, Fairy, you can wait here. With the elders here, how can I have a chance? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and declined. I see.
Fairy Fei Ying heard and smiled.
If you are going to wait here, then I will go to Jianghu City to take a look. Since Master Wu wants to return to Xianxia Mountain and needs to use the transportation array of Jianghu City, why don't we go together? With me bringing you along, it will be faster. Ayo! Zhang Xiaohua groaned inwardly when he heard that. He didn't want to be with them. He just wanted to quickly find a place and find some people to figure out where he was and where he came from. Then he could make plans. Fairy Fei Ying followed her all the way, and she might expose herself. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but regret. Why did she try to be smart? Why did she acknowledge Su Yan faction as her sect? But, if she didn't acknowledge a sect, how could she do it? Fortunately, there weren't any disciples of Su Yan faction outside the Imperial Demon Valley. If she acknowledged someone else, wouldn't she be exposed long ago? Zhang Xiaohua was in a dilemma. Chapter 3161. Xiaohua thought for a moment and quickly bowed. I don't dare to delay Fairy's journey. I'll go on my own and gain experience along the way. Experience? Fairy Fei Ying smiled. You're alone. What experience? Even if you're killed by others, your sect seniors won't know. You'd better hurry back to Xianxia Mountain and meet up with your senior and junior brothers. You can come back for experience next time. Hearing Fairy Fei Ying's words, Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how to answer. Knowing that she wasn't lying, she could only nod. Then, I'll have to trouble Senior. Hee, it's fine. It's on the way anyway. As Fairy Fei Ying spoke, she waved her hand,
and a flying shuttle stopped in front of Zhang Xiaohua with a flash of light. "Get on."
Fairy Fei Ying pointed at the spacious flying shuttle and said with a smile, "Although my flying shuttle is broken, it can still be used. It's much better than flying talismans like the double flying talisman." "I'll do as you say. Thank you, Senior."
Zhang Xiaohua smiled and was about to get on the flying shuttle.
"Oh right. Fairy mentioned Jianghu City. I have some matters to attend to. How about we go together?"
That white-haired old man slapped his forehead and said, "I've heard that Fairy obtained a broken flying talisman during the auction in Jianghu City.
It's really rare. Why don't I take a look at it today?" "Gan Qinggu you? What do you mean?" Fairy Fei Ying's expression changed slightly. "Nothing. Fairy, isn't my disciple in Jianghu City? I've been here for a long time and haven't seen him. Isn't it just right to ride on Fairy's flying shuttle?"
Gan Qinggu looked innocent and shook his head.
"If Fairy doesn't welcome me, then I'll have to go by myself." Hee, that's right. Jianghu City isn't demon-resisting valley. There's no rule about who can and can't go there. We also have matters to attend to and would like to accompany Fairy. If Fairy doesn't want to, then we'll go with Brother Gon." The remaining 3 people also said with a smile. Fairy Fei Ying's expression changed a few times, but she didn't say anything.
She jumped onto the shuttle and laughed. "There are so many of you.
How can my shuttle fit all of you? You'd better think of your own ways." As he spoke, he patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and said, "Great Teacher Wu, stand firm." Zhang Xiaohua's heart jumped.
Without waiting for him to speak, the flying shuttle suddenly moved and soared into the sky. Although Zhang Xiaohua had already prepared himself, but still, he was almost thrown off the flying shuttle. "Great Teacher Nephew Wu, be careful. This flying magic treasure is not like a normal flying talisman. Also, my flying shuttle is a bit damaged." Fairy Fei Ying reminded him absent-mindedly. Then, she scanned the area behind her with her divine sense. Her expression became ugly as she whispered, "These people are really boring." As she spoke, she channeled her spiritual energy. The flying shuttle suddenly sped up and flew forward quickly. In just a few moments, the flying shuttle was already high up in the sky. Its speed was extremely fast, and the wind in the sky was getting stronger and stronger. Just as Zhang Xiaohua's mouth and nose were filled with wind and he was about to react, Fairy Fei Ying formed a hand seal and hit the flying shuttle. A soft pink barrier rose up around the flying shuttle, enveloping the 2 of them. The sound of the wind was almost inaudible.
After flying for half a day, the sun gradually set in the west. Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to casually talk to Fairy Fei Ying, and Fairy Fei Ying seemed to hate Gan Qinggu and the others. She kept looking back and speeding up the flying shuttle, so the 2 of them didn't speak for the entire journey. However, during this time, Zhang Xiaohua only felt that there were dense forests and countless mountain ranges under her feet. She didn't see any cities or the like. She couldn't help but feel a bit strange. This flying shuttle was extremely fast. Shouldn't it have traveled for more than 1,000 miles? Why hadn't they reached Jianghu City yet? Zhang Xiaohua held this question for a long time. When the sky turned dark, she couldn't help but ask, "Senior, your flying shuttle is really fast. This is the first time I'm sitting on such a fast flying shuttle. I wonder if we can reach Jianghu City before nightfall." Before nightfall? Fairy Fei Ying had a strange expression on her face. She shook her head and said, "Great Teacher Nephew Wu, have you never been to Jianghu City before?" Zhang Xiaohua said honestly, "I've flown by in the sky. I don't have much of an impression of Jianghu City." "I was wondering." Fairy Fei Ying looked back and said, "Jianghu City is more than 10,000 miles away from here. Although my flying shuttle is fast, we can only reach it tomorrow afternoon." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohua almost exclaimed. It was just a city. How could it be so far away? Bad. Before Zhang Xiaohua could ask again, Fairy Fei Ying's face was filled with anger. When Zhang Xiaohua looked back, she saw a faint red radiance appear behind the flying shuttle. It was chasing after the flying shuttle at high speed. Fairy Fei Ying gritted her teeth secretly. The spiritual power under her feet surged even more fiercely. Zhang Xiaohua only felt the flying shuttle under her feet shake. It seemed to have sped up a bit. After a while, the radiance behind them got closer and closer. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. These people, why are they chasing so fast? Senior, why don't we wait for them? Fairy Fei Ying snorted coldly and didn't answer. She looked back and took out something from her waist. She threw it in front of the flying shuttle and made a hand seal. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt her body become light, as if she was about to float. The flying shuttle suddenly sank. The thing that Fairy Fei Ying threw out just now was like the radiance emitted by the flying shuttle. It flew straight in the direction of the flying shuttle. Not long after, a few whoosh-whoosh sounds could be heard. A few radiances flew over Zhang Xiaohua's head without even looking down. When the radiances were far away, Fairy Fei Ying didn't say anything. She surged her spiritual power and the flying shuttle slanted and flew in another direction. Senior, didn't we agree to go to Jianghu City? Zhang Xiaohua didn't know where Jianghu City was exactly, but she had a bad feeling in her heart. Great Master Wu, I'm a little tired. Why don't we rest for a while before going? Fairy Fei Ying looked at Zhang Xiaohua with a polite attitude. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head. Please forgive me, Senior. I've been out for a long time. I don't dare to delay any longer. If Senior doesn't have time, I can go by myself. Maybe I'll meet those seniors just now. They can even give me a ride. Ha, let them give you a ride. Fairy Fei Ying laughed so hard that she almost bent over. Then, she suddenly stopped laughing and looked into the distance. She asked curiously, They? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. Just as he was about to turn around to look, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. He moved his feet and used an extremely beautiful movement skill. With a whoosh sound, a red brilliance flew close to his waist and barely passed by him. What kind of movement technique is that? Fairy Fei Ying asked in surprise. What are you doing? Zhang Xiaohua looked up and saw nothing but darkness. She immediately understood. She turned around and said angrily, Senior, is this a sneak attack? Sneak attack? Ha. Fairy Fei Ying sneered. You're just a Qi refinement junior. Do you think you're worthy of being sneak attacked by me? Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. He released his divine sense to prevent Fairy Fei Ying from doing anything else. Then, he looked at the faint radiance on the flying shuttle and complained in his heart. Although he didn't know what was going on here, looking at the radiance that covered him, how could he not know that this thing was very difficult to deal with? After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, Senior, aren't you and the master of my sect? Before Zhang Xiaohua could finish, Fairy Fei Ying laughed and said, I know Zhu Qinghe, but Zhu Qinghe doesn't know me. Don't you think we're old acquaintances? Zhang Xiaohua felt bitter in his mouth, but he still smiled and said, Then, Senior, are you misunderstanding me? I just went to the demon-resisting valley. I don't have a single cent on me. Senior, are you looking for the wrong person? Young man, you're not telling the truth. Fairy Fei Ying saw this and pointed at the flying shuttle. The radiance on the flying shuttle gradually dimmed. She said, You're really an idiot. How can you casually get on someone else's flying shuttle? Especially someone with a higher cultivation level than you? You really are a first-time disciple of Su Yan faction. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's gloomy face, Fairy Fei Ying's benevolent face also showed a sinister smile. Forget it. I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. Quickly throw your storage ring over and let me see. If there's anything I like, I'll kill you and send you into the 6 realms of reincarnation. If there's nothing, don't blame me for being ruthless and pulling out your soul so that you can't reincarnate. You. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Fairy Fei Ying's benevolent face half a day ago. His heart was cold. Only now did he know what the reason was. It was because of the storage ring he put on his finger. This thing. He didn't have any impression of it. Of course, he didn't know how precious it was. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes narrowed as he tried to think of a way to escape. I'll let you know, Fairy. This storage ring was bestowed by our sect. This time. There's nothing good inside. If Fairy wants this storage ring, I'll give it to you. However, I hope that Fairy will be magnanimous and spare my life. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes narrowed as he thought of a way to escape. Ha. You're still not being honest at this time? The sinister look on Fairy Fei Ying's face disappeared. She regained her benevolent smile and said, "A storage ring is so precious. I've never seen one before. How many does your Su Yen faction have? How could they give it to a little qi refining cultivator like you? Do I still need to tell you the origin of this storage ring?" Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. He raised his hand and took the storage ring. He said, "Senior, are you sure you got this from the demon-resisting valley?" "Haha, do you still need to ask? It's not just me. Didn't those old things who were chasing us see your storage ring? If it weren't for you, would they ignore the demon-resisting valley and follow you to Jianghu City?" Fairy Fei Ying said. She waved her hand and a suction force pulled the storage ring in Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Chapter 3162. Could it be, if Chongqing Academy loses, you'll also have to leave Chongqing town? Taoist Xiao looked at the scholar, then looked at the fat white monk next to him and asked with a sneer. Principal Zhu shook his head with a smile. This bet is between Jiangchao Temple and Shaojin Temple. It has nothing to do with Chongqing Academy. Of course, if Jiangchao Temple doesn't agree, then just pretend I didn't say anything. Taoist Xiao was very hesitant. Chongqing Academy was different from Shaojin Temple. It didn't have any direct conflict with Jiangchao Temple. Many scholars even greeted Taoist Xiao politely when they saw him. Some young scholars even went to Jiangchao Temple when they were watching the tide from the riverside. Taoist Xiao also knew that Principal Zhu was called Zhu Junfeng. He was very famous in Chongqing town. Not only were there the heirs of big families in Chongqing town in the academy, there were also the heirs of ordinary people. Many students within a radius of several hundred li also came to the academy to study. Although he hadn't seen Zhu Junfeng before, his name was like thunder to his ears. With Zhu Junfeng's participation, he definitely wouldn't be at a disadvantage in the challenge against Shaojin Temple. But the problem was that the Chongqing Academy was a real academy and a real Confucian cultivator. Not only was it more powerful than the Taoist school, which pretended to be a sheep's head and dog's meat, but even the Shaojin Temple couldn't be compared to it. If he played along with these two schools, wouldn't he become the laughingstock of the Immortal and Buddha ceremony? However, thinking about Shaojin Temple's monk Mingyu's confidence and the surrounding people's gazes, Taoist Xiao braced himself and said with a fake smile, "Chongqing Town is originally Chongqing Academy and Shaojin Temple's Chongqing Town. My Jiangchao Temple is just an outsider. Since Chongqing Academy wants to hold an Immortal and Buddhist ceremony with Shaojin Temple, why ask Jiangchao Temple?" Hee. Does that mean Taoist Xiao agrees? Monk Mingyu was a bit unhappy at first, but after listening for a while, he changed to a smile and asked, "Does it make a difference whether I agree or not?" Taoist Xiao rolled his eyes in annoyance. He looked at Xiao Hua and Yuanya behind him and said, "However, the rules of this challenge need to be set by Jiangchao Temple." Hee. Taoist Xiao is overstepping. Zhu Junfeng was still indifferent. The feather fan in his hand flickered a few times as he said, "The challenge was issued by the River Tide Temple. The time and location were proposed by the Little Gold Temple. The rules of this challenge will naturally be set by my Longevity Academy. My Jiangchao Temple only has 3 people. I'll leave it up to you." Taoist Master Xiao had no choice but to point out the crux of the matter. "Don't worry, Taoist Master Xiao. The Longevity Academy will definitely take this into consideration." Zhu Junfeng nodded and replied, "Principal Zhu is famous for his impartiality in handling matters. With Longevity Academy setting the rules, my Little Gold Temple is completely at ease." Monk Bright Joy agreed with a radiant smile. "No." Hearing Zen Master Mingyu's agreement, Taoist Master Xiao could not take it anymore. He shook his head vigorously. "The ones making the bet are my River Tide Temple and Small Gold Temple. Chongqing Academy isn't even betting. Why do we have to let Chongqing Academy set the rules?" When Zhu Junfeng heard Taoist Master Xiao mention betting, he couldn't help but frown. He closed the fan in his hand and said, "If that's the case, then the rules. I'll have to trouble the River Tide Temple." "All right. Zen Master Ming, you seem to have a well-thought-out plan." Hearing Zhu Junfeng's agreement, he did not raise any objections and only nodded in agreement. Seeing that the matter was settled,
Zhu Junfeng cupped his hands and said, "I'll take my leave first. See you at Small Gold Temple in 10 days. After saying that, Zhu Junfeng cupped his hands again and turned around to leave. Zen Master Ming Yu blinked his eyes. Half of the joy from before had disappeared. He turned to look at his 2 junior brothers behind him. The 3 of them nodded slightly. Then, without saying goodbye to Taoist Master Xiao, they turned around and returned to Small Gold Temple. It seemed like they attached great importance to this challenge. They didn't even bother with fishing people out and focused all their energy on this matter. After the Buddhist and Confucian disciples left, the villagers of Longevity Town naturally dispersed as well. However, their faces were filled with excitement as they discussed in low voices. Obviously, in less than an hour, everyone in Longevity Town would know about the challenge in 10 days. The only one who was depressed was Taoist Master Xiao. Phew! Seeing that the crowd had dispersed, he let out a long sigh and sat down on a chair. He stared at the ground in a daze. There were dozens of ants that had been trampled to death by the crowd. Looking at the position, it seemed to be where Zen Master Ming Yu and the other monks of Small Gold Temple were standing. After the time it took to finish a meal, Taoist Master Xiao finally straightened up. He looked around at the empty surroundings and snorted coldly. He flung his Taoist robe and said, "Yeah, what are you standing there for?
Hurry up and put these things away."
"Yes, Master,"
Xianxia replied.
He walked forward and placed the chair on the table. He picked it up with one hand and quickly walked away. It seemed like he was going to return the table and chair.
Xiaohua.
Seeing that Xianxia had left, Taoist Master Xiao probed, "Can you beat Xianxia?"
Maybe.
Xiaohua did not deny it. "I've never fought with him before, so I'm not too sure."
Can you participate in the challenge 10 days later? If you participate, I can consider letting you stay by my side.
It can be considered. Taoist Master Xiao wanted to say something but stopped. He seemed to be probing. He knew that if Xiaohua could beat Xianxia, and if Xiaohua did not want to participate, he could not do anything to Xiaohua. But if Xiaohua could not beat Xianxia, what was the use of Xiaohua participating? Moreover, he saw that Xiaohua had returned, which basically confirmed his guess. However, he was not willing to shed all pretense of cordiality until the last moment. When Xiaohua heard this, he could not help but smile. He knew that Taoist Master Xiao was suspecting his origin again, so he shook his head slightly and said, "I'm not a disciple of Jianghu Temple. Why would I participate in the challenge between Jianghu Temple and Small Gold Temple? This has nothing to do with staying by Taoist Master Zhao's side, right?" Keep pretending. Taoist Master Xiao laughed in his heart and secretly said, "Since you want to pretend, I'll pretend with you. Anyway, I still need your help. If you can lend this old man a helping hand, then this old man will play with you."
Taoist Master Xiao.
Now, it's no longer about the grudge between Jianghu Temple and Small Gold Temple. Since Taoist Master Xiao had decided, his face became serious and said very seriously, "It's about the grudge between my Taoist sect and Buddhist sect. Even mentioning the Immortal Buddha ceremony that happens once every 10 years, it's about the grudge between Taoist sect, Buddhist sect, and Confucian sect. As a disciple of my Taoist sect, how can you not participate? Moreover, my Jianghu Temple's challenge was defeated. I and Xianxia will have to leave Longevity Town. Could it be that fellow Taoist Xiao also wants to leave with us?" "Who said that I'm a Taoist sect disciple?" Xiaohua smiled, touched his nose and said, "It seems like someone said that I'm not worthy to call myself fellow Taoist." "AI, forget it. You can participate or not." Taoist Master Xiao suddenly lost his patience, waved his hand and said, "Your meridians are naturally blocked, you're basically unable to cultivate. Just relying on your fists and feet, even if you can defeat Xianxia, you're still not a match for the true experts of Buddhist sect and Confucian sect. Moreover, looking at that monk Ming Yu's meaning, 3 days later, their Buddhist sect should send an expert to Small Gold Temple. Otherwise, how would he dare to challenge Xianxia? What's the Immortal Buddha ceremony? What's the matter with naturally blocked meridians? How do you know?" Xiaohua asked several whys in a row. "How do I know?" Taoist Master Xiao looked up and down at Xiaohua and said in a low voice, "A straightforward person doesn't speak insinuations. You don't know how I know." "Why do I need to know? How do you know?" Xiao Hua touched his nose and said with interest, "How do I need to know?" "How do you know?" "You." Taoist Master Xiao clenched his teeth. It seems like he's also prepared to pretend to the end with Xiao Hua. A trace of pride even appeared on his face. "My Taoist sex techniques are boundless. Finding out that your meridians are blocked is really easy. It's a pity that you don't cultivate Taoist techniques. You'll never understand in this lifetime." As for the Immortal Buddha ceremony, immediately, Taoist Master Xiao controlled his temper and briefly explained the Immortal Buddha ceremony. It was vaguely similar to what Zhu Junfeng said. In ancient times, after the Buddhist sect and Confucian sect joined forces to exterminate the Taoist sect, in order to commemorate the alliance of the two sects, they agreed to hold a ceremony every 10 years. This Immortal Buddha ceremony was considered lively many years ago. Confucian sect and Buddhist sect often used this as an opportunity to exchange pointers and cultivate, and even held hundreds of activities to strangle the Taoist sect. But later on, as the Taoist sect disciples disappeared, it gradually became deserted. Longevity Town was a small town in the country of Xi. If Zhu Junfeng didn't specifically mention it, who would have thought that 10 days later would be the day of the Immortal Buddha ceremony that was held once every 10 years? After Taoist Master Xiao finished speaking, Xianxia also returned. "Let's go." Taoist Master Xiao was very dull, as if this conversation with Xiao Hua had completely worn out his patience. He swung his Taoist robe and said, "I'll go back and discuss it." But, after waiting for Taoist Master Xiao to take 2 steps, Xianxia reminded in a low voice, "Master, the rice and noodles in the temple. I'm afraid there's not enough. This disciple has to go buy some. And you go and put some on credit." Taoist Master Xiao very naturally ordered, but when he saw Xianxia's awkward expression and his feet that hadn't moved, he helplessly took out a few copper coins from his sleeve and threw them to Xianxia, saying, "I only have these copper coins, you go, first deal with tomorrow." "Yes, master." Xianxia took the copper coins and turned to leave. "I'll go." Xiao Hua hurriedly called out to Xianxia, "You've already put them on credit many times. I'm afraid you don't have any face. You wait here for a moment. I'll go and try." "All right." Taoist Xiao nodded his head and signaled Xianxia to give the copper coins to Xiao Hua. When Xianxia gave the copper coins to Xiao Hua, he unexpectedly took out a cloth bag from his sleeve. Obviously, he had already prepared to go to the rice noodle shop today. Xiao Hua naturally didn't need the two to wait for long. In just a moment he came back with a small bag of rice. "So much." Looking at the small amount of rice, Taoist Master Xiao was a little surprised. Looking at his face and then at Xianxia puzzled, he said, "You don't look as handsome as Xianxia, do you?" "It's not that this Xiao's face is big." Xiao Hua laughed. "It's that Taoist Master Xiao's face is big." This Xiao went over and gave the copper coins, saying that Taoist Master Xiao would challenge Shaojin Temple and Chongqing Academy in 10 days. The rice and noodle shop owner's eyes immediately lit up, and she didn't want this Xiao's copper coins no matter what. She even gave the rice that was just delivered from outside the town to Taoist Master Xiao, clearly saying that she didn't want half a copper coin. Chapter 3163. Zhang Xiaohua clenched her fists and said with a smile, "Fairy, if you can release this junior from the flying shuttle now, this junior will give this ring to you." "Hee, are you trying to negotiate with me?" Fairy Fei Ying sneered. "From the moment you stepped onto this flying shuttle, you no longer have the right to bargain. If it weren't for Gon Qinggu messing things up, I would have already made my move. Quick, hand over that ring." Fairy Fei Ying seemed to have lost her patience. She released her aura, and a strong pressure was emitted from her body, pressing down on Zhang Xiaohua. At the same time, Fairy Fei Ying pointed with her hand, and several rays of light rose from the edge of the flying shuttle and shot toward Zhang Xiaohua. That formless aura was like a mountain, and it pressed down on Zhang Xiaohua until she couldn't breathe. Although she didn't fall down, she had no time to deal with the rays of light around her. Left with no choice, Zhang Xiaohua flung her hand, and the storage ring flew toward Fairy Fei Ying. Seeing this, Fairy Fei Ying's face lit up with joy. She waved her hand, and the storage ring seemed to be pulled by a thin string and was about to be thrown toward Fairy Fei Ying's hand. However, at this moment, there was a series of loud rumbling sounds. The light shield on the flying shuttle shook violently, and Zhang Xiaohua and Fairy Fei Ying's bodies shook violently. With a loud bang, the light shield on the flying shuttle burst like a bubble, and the whistling night wind immediately blew onto Xianxia's bald head. At the same time that the light shield of the flying shuttle burst, several strong pulling forces hit the storage ring, and immediately stopped it from flying toward Fairy Fei Ying. Zhang Xiaohua looked up and saw Jianghu and the other three standing around the flying shuttle. They were standing on rays of light and looking at Fairy Fei Ying mockingly.
You! Fairy Fei Ying panicked.
She didn't care about the flying shuttle anymore, and her body flashed, and she reached for the storage ring that was very close to her.
How dare you! Jianghu shouted and pointed his finger.
An item that looked like a hammer smashed toward Fairy Fei Ying like a meteor, making a piercing sound as it flew through the air. From the looks of it, if Fairy Fei Ying were to take the storage ring, the hammer would definitely severely injure her.
Fairy Fei Ying was helpless.
She stopped and patted her waist, and a green ray of light flew out. When it was in the air, the light scattered and turned into a petal, blocking the hammer. Before the flower petals could block the hammer, an orange-red ring with flickering flames flew toward Fairy Fei Ying's back.
Fellow Taoists.
Seeing this, Fairy Fei Ying's expression changed slightly, and she didn't dare to get close to the storage ring. She retreated far away and barely dodged the flaming ring. She said loudly, "Let's talk things over.
I know I was wrong.
This storage ring, how about the 5 of us share it equally?"
Ha! You old beggar.
I hinted to you earlier, yet you ignored me and even used a pretense to trick me. If it wasn't for fellow Taoist Kwang noticing and us rushing back in time, wouldn't you have already taken the storage ring for yourself? Now that you see how powerful we are, you are begging for mercy?
Don't you think it's too late?
Fairy Fei Ying smiled apologetically.
I was blinded by greed. Please forgive me, fellow Taoists. We put ourselves in each other's shoes. This storage ring is too attractive.
Just as Fairy Fei Ying was explaining, she suddenly screamed and fell from the flying shuttle. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He looked over and saw an extremely small bug with a pale yellow glow crawling out of Fairy Fei Ying's forehead. It spread its wings and flew toward a tall and thin elder beside Jianghu. Fairy Fei Ying's eyes widened in shock. She looked over and saw an extremely small bug with a pale yellow glow crawling out of her forehead. Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist Feng is indeed powerful. Is your brain corrosion be already at the 4th stage? Even that old beggar Fei Ying's protective true qi couldn't block it? No. Fei Ying only forgot to release her protective true qi when she was in the flying shuttle. We attacked the moment we arrived, so she reacted quickly and didn't have time. If I didn't make a move, she might not have a chance when she remembered later. The elder with the surname Feng said proudly. Besides, isn't this the only thing my spirit husbandry sect can take out? Without this little thing, how would I dare to speak in front of fellow Taoist? Without Fairy Fei Ying's control, the flying shuttle didn't immediately fall from the sky. It only floated in the air and stopped at Zhang Xiaohua's feet. And because Fairy Fei Ying was no longer fighting for the storage ring, it actually gradually flew toward Zhang Xiaohua's eyes. The storage ring only gradually stopped when it was in front of Zhang Xiaohua's eyes. The force on the ring suddenly disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua looked up at the 4 people outside the flying shuttle and sighed in her heart. She stretched out her hand and still grabbed the storage ring. She then cupped her hands and said, "Seniors, this ring, this junior doesn't want it anymore. Please, spare this junior's life."
Do you think it's possible? Jianghu sneered.
Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "Then, all right, since that's the case." As she said that, Zhang Xiaohua looked around and said, "I wonder which senior should I give this ring to? The things in this ring don't seem to be enough." Hearing that, Jianghu's expression changed slightly. He looked up at the 3 people not far away and retreated a little. He circulated all his magic power and protected his body with his true qi. Then, as if he was still worried, he patted his waist and a small round plate flew out. It emitted a green light and protected his body again. Not only him, but fellow Taoist Feng and the other 2 people were also like Jianghu. They didn't believe it at all and also protected themselves very tightly. When the brilliance of the disc protected him, Jianghu sneered and said, "Little guy, your method of sowing discord seems to be too poor. We have already made things clear along the way.
The things in the storage ring should be divided into 4 parts. If there is a single item, whoever wants it must compensate the others with spirit stones of the corresponding value. Gon Qinggu sneered. You are right. Don't you think so, fellow Taoists? Haha. Fellow Taoist Feng is right. Fellow Taoist Feng, take out the things in the ring one by one. A slightly fat old man sneered. The things in the ring can of course be divided. How about this? I'll give you all the things in the ring. This ring? It's not easy to divide it. Can't you let me keep it? Xianxia scratched her head and said innocently. Hearing this, although it was night time, Xianxia could feel that the expressions of the 4 people changed greatly. She now knew the value of the storage ring. She knew that the value of the ring itself was much higher than the things in the ring, so she deliberately mentioned it. Unfortunately, the 4 people seemed to have already discussed it on the way here. At this time, they were transmitting a message to each other, saying something that Zhang Xiaohua didn't know. Immediately, everyone's expressions relaxed. Fellow Taoist Feng laughed and said, You little fellow, you're really sharp-tongued. No wonder you have such a cultivation at such a young age. If it was in normal times, wouldn't I love you? But, at this time, I'm the knife and you're the fish. Even if you have a glib tongue, what can you do? Zhang Xiaohua's face was pale. She waved her hand and threw the storage ring to fellow Taoist Feng, saying, In that case, I'll give this ring to you, senior. Fellow Taoist Feng was pleasantly surprised to see the storage ring flying over, but at the same time, he secretly cursed in his heart. Sure enough, as the ring flew over, Gon Qinggu and the others also looked over. When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, his figure flashed, and he jumped down from the flying shuttle. His figure flashed, and he flew into the distance. Unfortunately, before she could fly 30 feet, her body and the flying shuttle were blocked by an invisible barrier. Although the barrier wasn't abnormally hard, it still made Zhang Xiaohua dizzy. Then, a ray of light flashed, and something that looked like a fishing net appeared in the night sky. It covered Zhang Xiaohua's head, and he could not move at all. The fishing net wrapped around Zhang Xiaohua and flew up into the sky. It only stopped when it reached the location of the shuttle. Gon Qinggu and the other 3 originally took out their magic tools to attack fellow Taoist Kuang. However, Zhang Xiaohua's escape alerted everyone. Fellow Taoist Kuang quickly flew up into the sky and pointed his finger. A faint light flashed and hit the storage ring flying towards him. The ring stopped in mid-air. Then, he waved his hand again. The fishing net that caught Zhang Xiaohua flashed and flew to the side of the ring and stopped. Fellow Taoists, don't worry. Fellow Taoist Feng immediately shouted, Don't try to sow discord. This ring, I won't touch it. This sentence was shouted at the right time. When Gon Qinggu and the others saw this, their minds moved slightly and they all took back their magic tools that flew out. However, they kept some distance from the ring and didn't really take it back. How about this, everyone? We won't take this ring. We'll only let this little guy take out the things in it. We'll divide these things first and then carefully discuss the ownership of the ring. What do you think? Fellow Taoist Feng saw that he had become the target of public criticism, so he didn't dare to be careless and suggested. Gon Qinggu thought for a moment and looked at the several people in the distance. After discussing for a while, they all nodded in agreement. Unfortunately, even though they agreed, Zhang Xiaohua disagreed. Zhang Xiaohua snorted coldly. I've already given this ring to you. It has nothing to do with me who takes it. I'm already a bird in a cage. I can't even fly. Who has the patience to do these things? Hee hee. Fellow Taoist Feng heard this and sneered. He pinched a spell and the net-like magic tool tied Zhang Xiaohua tightly. Then, it contracted tightly, as if it was going to absorb Zhang Xiaohua's flesh. Fellow Taoist Feng, who was looking forward to Zhang Xiaohua's painful expression and begging for mercy, was stunned. His magic tool, which had worked repeatedly, was actually wrapped around Zhang Xiaohua's clothes and couldn't be absorbed into her flesh. Fellow Taoist Feng changed his spell again and hit Zhang Xiaohua's body one after another. Unfortunately, no matter how much magic power he used, there seemed to be something strange about Zhang Xiaohua's clothes. The thin rope on the net just couldn't be retracted. Chapter 3164. Hee hee. Even though he knew that Xiao Hua was talking nonsense, Daoist Zhao's face was still very happy. He even proudly stroked his beard that he could barely touch. He waved his hand and arrogantly said, "Let's go. We'll go back to Jianghu Temple." When Xiao Hua and the others passed by the tea shed, there was no one inside. However, the two people playing chess were still sitting there. Of course, the chessboard was gone, replaced by some wine and dishes. The two people chatted while drinking, full of interest. When they saw Xiao Daoist and the others coming back, they picked up their wine bowls and drank it all. Hee hee, this Xiao Daoist. I'm afraid he thinks I'm with these two people. After listening to Xiao Daoist's probing words today, Xiao Hua already understood. But he didn't plan to say anything before Xiao Daoist made it clear to him. After 100 years of secluded cultivation, Xiao Hua, who had a lively personality, was a bit impatient. Since he encountered such an interesting matter, why didn't he get involved? Io, why are there so many people on the mountain path? Xiao Hua looked at the two people, then looked left and right. He naturally looked at the mountain ridge where Jianghu Temple was located and couldn't help but be surprised.
He saw that there was not a single person on the mountain path, but now, from the bottom to the top, from the foot of the mountain to Jianghu Temple, there were many people standing.
Although it wasn't to the point of being crowded, there were still hundreds of people. Master, not good. Xiao Hua just saw that Xianxia was also panicking. He hurriedly said, "You're in trouble again, someone is chasing us. We can't go back to Jianghu Temple. While they haven't seen Master, let's hurry and leave." Trouble again. Xiao Hua was surprised, somewhat puzzled. What did he mean by trouble again? Is that so? Xiao Daoist was thinking about the challenge 10 days later, so he didn't notice the people on the mountain ridge. When he heard Yuanya's words, he was naturally shocked and hurriedly raised his head. When he saw the abnormality on the mountain path, he also exclaimed and hurriedly turned around. He said, "Hurry, hurry, don't let them see me." Although Xiao Hua didn't understand, he still turned around with the two people. However, after a few hurried steps, Xiao Daoist suddenly stopped. She turned her head back and muttered, "That's not right. Isn't the matter of Song Manor already settled? This old man has already apologized to Old Song. Even their copper coins were returned to them. Why are they still here to cause trouble? What's more, it was the children of their families who came to beg this old man for help. Didn't this old man just follow their wishes and matchmake the two of them? It's not this old man's fault. Master, if he's not from the Song Manor, could it be someone else?" Yuanya reminded him from the side. "In the past few days, you haven't accepted those copper coins from others that shouldn't be accepted? Let this old man think." Daoist Xiao seemed to be unable to make up his mind. He lowered his head and pondered. After a while, he raised his head firmly and said, "Of course not. This old man has his own principles when it comes to giving advice on marriage. It relied on great magic power. That day, there were some problems with the Song family's 8 characters, but when this old man was calculating the heavenly mysteries, he was able to reverse their incompatibility. Only an ordinary person like Old Second Song would not be able to understand the heavenly mysteries. This old man wasted his magic power in vain and did not receive any money. This kind of thankless task, how could this old man do it again and again? This old man definitely did not." Then, Yuanya looked at the people on the distant mountain with some hesitation. He was puzzled and said, "What are these people doing at the Jianghu Temple? This time, there seems to be more people than last time." "Master, let's not go back. Go to the Longevity Town and find a place to hide? We don't want it to be the same as last time. They didn't ask for any details and beat you up. This disciple will have to protect Master again." But Daoist Zhao's face was somewhat red and his neck was thick. He argued, "This old man really didn't do anything these past few months. Why don't we just go and take a look?" Xiao Hua laughed at the side. "Last time, Daoist Xiao was afraid that you were in the Jianghu Temple and could not escape. This time, you are at the foot of the mountain. If the situation is not right..." "Yes." Daoist Xiao understood. "Yeah, you go and investigate." At this point, Daoist Xiao waved his hand and said, "Forget it, let this old man go. If I let you go, I'm afraid that you won't be able to find out anything. Yes, master. Xianxia agreed and obediently followed behind Taoist Xiao. Halfway there, Taoist Xiao was a little hesitant. He even wanted to change his clothes and go forward. Unfortunately, other than his Taoist robe, the three people did not have any other clothes in their bags. He could only take off his Taoist hat and go up the mountain with his hair draped over his shoulders.
When he caught up with the old man who was walking at the end of the mountain path, Taoist Xiao gathered his courage and bowed.
Immeasurable deity, I am here to greet you. May I ask if you are from the Longevity Town's Song Manor? The old man was originally climbing up the mountain while panting. When he heard the footsteps behind him, before he could turn around, he heard Taoist Xiao's extremely polite greeting. He hurriedly stopped and replied before he could catch his breath. Greetings, Taoist Xiao. This old farmer is from the Longevity Town's General Ridge, not from the Song Manor. Phew! When he heard that the old man was not from the Song Manor, Taoist Xiao let out a long sigh. He looked at the old man who was gasping for air and asked curiously, It's already late. What are you doing here in the Jianghu Ridge instead of resting at home? Of course I'm here to visit the Jianghu Temple. At this time it was really late. The old man could not see Taoist Xiao's Taoist robe clearly. He smiled and said, Other than the Jianghu Temple, what else is there to see in the Jianghu Ridge? Jianghu Temple? Taoist Xiao's expression changed. He asked tentatively, The Jianghu Temple is just a small Taoist temple. What's there to see? The Jianghu Temple. The old man's face showed a strange expression. It was as if he had just seen Taoist Xiao's Taoist robe clearly. He stopped mid-sentence and asked curiously, Taoist Xiao? Oh, you're the Taoist Xiao of the Jianghu Temple? Yes. I am Taoist Xiao of the Jianghu Temple. Taoist Xiao hesitated for a moment and finally had the courage to admit it. Taoist Xiao, you're Taoist Xiao? When the old man heard this, he suddenly shouted, Fellow villagers, Taoist Xiao of the Jianghu Temple is here. No, I'm Taoist Xiao. At this time, Taoist Xiao did not dare to show off in front of Xiao Hua and hastily denied it. But how could the old man listen to him? He was excitedly shouting and waving his arms. Taoist Xiao is here. Quickly! When the people in front heard the three words Taoist Xiao, they immediately exploded and turned around. Let's go! Taoist Xiao made a prompt decision. He did not hesitate at all and turned around to escape. Oh! Taoist Xiao, don't worry. While Taoist Xiao was talking to the old man, Xiao Hua had already released his soul sense. When he saw the situation at the Jianghu Temple, he smiled and pulled Xianxia in front of Taoist Xiao. He laughed and said, Look again, it doesn't seem like what you imagined. Quickly go! Taoist Xiao ignored Xiao Hua's laughter. They've already chased after us. What else can there be? In front. Is that Taoist Xiao? An extremely pleasantly surprised voice came from the mountain path below Xiao Hua and the others. This is bad. Taoist Xiao saw that there were people in front and behind him. His expression changed greatly. How could he tell the surprise in this voice? He hastily waved his hand and said, No, I can't wait. It's him. Before Taoist Xiao could finish his words, an old voice called out from behind him. This is Taoist Xiao of the Jianghu Temple. This old man saw him in town this afternoon. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? This Jianghu Temple is Taoist Xiao? If Xiao Hua had used his soul sense to see that everyone who entered the Jianghu Temple was piously prostrating themselves in front of the statue, he wouldn't have understood what was going on. But when he saw where this voice came from, Xiao Hua immediately understood. Wasn't this Mu Chu Fan the pitiful man who prayed for his wife's life last night? Xiao Hua knew about the effects of the Wu Yao pill. But if he hadn't personally checked the woman's pulse last night, Xiao Hua wouldn't have been sure that he could save her from death. He didn't even know if the woman who took the Wu Yao pill would immediately die. But when he saw how pitiful Mu Chu Fan was last night, Xiao Hua couldn't help but give 30% of the Wu Yao pill to Mu Chu Fan. After all, his wife was already in such a state. Things couldn't get any worse. So when he saw so many people, he really didn't think that it was because of the Wu Yao pill. He also didn't think that the Wu Yao pill's effects would be so obvious. Benevolent Lord, Daoist Xiao took advantage of the twilight to look at Mu Chu Fan, who had already rushed up.
He was especially astonished and hurriedly shouted, "You have to look clearly."
"When did you see I?"
"I don't have any recollection of it."
As he said that, Xiao Daoist winked at Xianxia. It looked like he wanted Xianxia to take him and escape down the mountain from the outside. When Xianxia saw Daoist Zhao's gaze, he immediately understood. It seemed that this wasn't the first time they had cooperated like this. He had already taken a step and was about to jump out of the mountain. However, Mu Chufan rolled and crawled to Daoist Zhao's feet. Without waiting for Daoist Xiao to say anything, he knelt down in front of Daoist Xiao with a putong sound.
He kowtowed and shouted, "This little one thanks Daoist Xiao for his great kindness.
My wife took the immortal pill bestowed by Daoist Xiao last night and had abdominal pain for the entire night. This little one should have come to Jianghu Temple in the afternoon to thank Daoist Xiao for his kindness. But after all, my wife has just recovered and her body is still weak.
Moreover, the villagers in General Ridge knew that my wife had narrowly escaped death and all came to see her.
Thus, this little one delayed until the evening." As he spoke, Mu Chufan hurriedly turned his head and shouted, "My child's mother, hurry up! Daoist Xiao is here." You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.